pressed their rubber, sold out to the merchant shelves. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs. Redemption songs. Redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Jeff Evely, the magnanimous Gen Xer male, back with you now on this 23rd day of January 2024. I took a little bit of time off there recently. Well, just a couple of days. I was in court yesterday. I think it went fairly well. I'll talk about that as we move into the program here a little bit. I'll give you maybe a highlight or two. But yeah, I was in court yesterday for a judicial review that I filed with respect to the proclamation in Nova Scotia that banned entry into the woods all over Nova Scotia during the so-called wildfires. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here today. So yeah, we got a great show lined up for you right now. And I'll go ahead and say my good mornings before I dive into it. Mud Turtle is giving us a triple slashy over on Rumble. First one on the board. Thanks for being with us, Century 2020. Also triple slashy right back at you guys. And we have Mother of the Drummers with us as always. Says, good morning, Jeff and chat shared on X. Thank you very much. Yes. And I appreciate the top cover, guys, because as I'm always saying, I'm the worst guy for not promoting my own stuff. So by all means, share this far and wide. We got to get the word out there. Terry is saying, good morning. Good morning to you, sir. And Patricia says, good morning. Good morning. And Jonathan says, watching on Rumble. Awesome. Yes. We're trying to get everybody migrated over to the Rumble. I know we still get a lot of interactions there on the Facebook page. Actually, our following is stronger than ever on the Facebook page these days. We're at about 23,000, which is, still a pretty modest following. But all things considered, I think it's pretty good. I mean, we've been pretty well aware of the fact that we're heavily suppressed for a long time. So it seems like we've been breaking through a little bit here and there, and people are finding us. So that is good to see. But Rumble is the free speech platform, not Facebook. I've been getting posts taken down. I get these notifications for like spam and stuff now, and they never tell you what the post is. Like it's like freaking Kafkaesque, for crying out loud. Like, Franz Kafka, the trial. It's like you don't even know the accusation against you. You're just in a struggle session with the Soviets. Okay, so here's Jane over on Facebook says, hello from Atlantic Canada. Hello to you from Atlantic Canada. And Luna says, beautiful until they blew it. Oh, what are you talking about there? Did I miss something? Okay. Chris Dacey is in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks for being with us. We got to do a muckraker. What do you say we plant a flag on next Monday so we can do a muckraker and get all caught up with Chris? He's our favorite contributor here. Okay, here's Steve says, good morning, listening while hauling trash. Well, Steve, you're a hardworking guy, man. I appreciate you very much. So thanks for being with us like this. And let's see. Colleen says, good morning. Good morning to you. And thanks for sending me the message to wish me well in court. A few people reached out to me. It's really nice. People, I think, are kind of coming together and supporting each other. It's great to see. Rob says, good morning, troops, patriots, and bigots. Giving us the triple slashy and the maple leaf triple slashy right back at you, brother. Andrew here is saying, good morning, Jeff Evely. Happy Tuesday, all triple slashy. Sic sampe tyrannis, which means thus always to tyrants. It's Latin. That's from the ancient Roman days, actually. This has been our heritage for a very long time. We don't put up with tyranny here in the West, and we're basically the only ones. We're dragging the rest of the world kicking and screaming into modernity. That is basically our heritage and our history going back to ancient times. Marion says, good morning, five people. Good morning to you, Bonnie Jane Cirque, I think is how you say that. So Bonnie, I'll say Bonnie. Good morning, she says. And Cindy, our most faithful of all watchers, is here saying, good morning, Jeff Hearts. Morning, friend, smiley face, and morning and hearts right back at you, Cindy. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and dive into this sucker. Here is our quote today coming from Jordan Peterson. And he says, and if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. So there's where the title for today's program comes for, what weak men are capable of. So that's what we're going to be discussing here. It's weak men versus strong men out there. That is the whole cycle of history, as I'm always pointing to. We're in a fourth turning, and every 4 generations we go into a crisis era when the weak men reach peak institutional power and start tyrannizing the hell out of us and just exploiting everybody for their own benefit. Okay, so let's go ahead. This is our meme. It's really a tweet, but I like this guy's account. It's pretty great. It's called Justin Trudeau's Ego, and he's a blue check mark there. He's pretty great on Twitter. He's got a picture of Justin Trudeau, and he's standing next to this army guy here. He's Canadian Armed Forces, and they're looking at the map, and he's pointing to something, and Justin Trudeau is looking pensively down at the map. And anyway, Justin Trudeau's Ego is saying, my national security advisor informed me that crime against humanity was committed at UFC 279 last night. Tampons were not available in the men's bathroom. That's why I'm banning UFC, Joe Rogan, and Dana White from Canada until they transition to women and sign up for MAID. Oh, well done, sir. That's a pretty great account. Give it a follow. Okay, and here's what he's talking about. This was Sean Strickland, the middleweight champion, at the press conference initially. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Here we go.
Respecting your teammates, from peers. You said you've had great interaction with fans pretty much all the time. I did want to ask, you're in Toronto. Welcome. Glad to hear it. It's been great.
Are you Canadian?
Of course I am.
Are you part of the fucking opposition? Are you?
I don't know how to phrase that.
I mean, you got like fucking. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask.
Did you vote for Trudeau?
I'm not gonna say.
And let me tell you something right now. If a man says he's not gonna say, like, if you ask a motherfucker, did you vote for Biden? He's like, well, I'm not gonna say. That's none of your business. He voted for fucking Biden.
Sean,
so hey,
Sean, I'm glad you've had great experiences.
So this is what I'm talking about, you guys. The enemy of Canada.
All right. That's what it's got to be. It's got to be. We've got a pretty supportive gay and lesbian community in this city. I did want to ask you about something you wrote a couple of years ago. You said, if I had a gay son, I would think I'd...
Oh, look, another. I'm saying to you, the swamp, you guys, the swamp.
You become a champion, you become a star, and someone...
Let me ask you something. Are you gay? No, are you... Let me know. Are you gay?
Can I get an answer?
Well, no, I'm asking. This is a part of... Are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
That means communist. I'm an ally. That means they're commies.
Okay. If you had a son and he was like, you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak fucking man, dude. You're part of the fucking problem. You elected Justin Trudeau. Like, when he sees the bank accounts, like, you're just fucking pathetic. And the fact that you have no fucking backbone. And has he shut down your fucking country and seized bank accounts? You ask me some stupid shit like that, go fuck yourself. Move the fuck on, man.
That doesn't really answer the question, but I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so...
Like, oh, here we go. I think he's just having fun now. Like, look at the look on his face. He's like, yeah, I can't wait for this.
Hard on Bud Light in your next fight. They'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what, and we'll know what they stand for.
This guy's like, nah, this Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your fight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental fucking illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you have fucking weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of fucking you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying your fucking bullshit you're fucking peddling. The world is not saying, you know what? You're right. Fucking chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that. The world's saying, no, there are two genders. I don't want my kids being taught about, who they could fuck in school. I don't want my kids being taught about, their sexual preference. Like, dude, this guy is the fucking enemy. You want to look at the fucking enemy to our world? It's that motherfucker right there, asking these stupid fucking questions. Sorry, I told the UFC I was being nicer. Lance, am I still good with this? Did I cross any lines? A little. What the fuck? I didn't say the F word. You just brought this fucking guy in here to piss me off.
You just did, but just to follow up, I mean, Rick.
Did I say it?
You just did.
No, I didn't say it.
Right there, you did.
Different F word. Different word. Yeah. I'm trying to be good, man. I'm trying to be good. I like the fucking gays.
Yeah, he means faggot. He doesn't mean fuck. Sorry, pardon the vulgarity, guys. And I just found that funny. It was so funny where he's like, I didn't say the F word, and he's been dropping F bombs the whole time. He's like, no, I mean the other one, the one that Trudeau used in the House of Commons.
Here's the thing. I've never. You guys think I've ever shit on a gay man or shit on a gay woman? I like the gays. It's fucking freedom. We still have it in America. We'll teach you about it. You guys don't have fucking freedom of speech. I'm surprised what I'm saying is probably gonna get the fucking Canadian government to arrest me. So I don't give a fuck who you fuck. I don't give a fuck what you want to do in life. But don't fucking tell kids about it. Don't teach that shit in fucking school. Don't fucking push your agenda. Don't try to fucking brainwash people. Don't try to go past parents. Don't try to go up past all this shit and brainwash people, you fucking cuck.
Finishes that out with cuck. All right. And straight up, guys, I haven't watched UFC in years. I haven't watched any sports in years. UFC was the only sport. Mixed martial arts was the only sport that I used to watch. And it's like, because I'm all washed up now, I can't do it anymore. So it's just kind of like too painful for me to watch UFC. And plus the millennials I find are just too much with the smack talk. The Gen Xers were, there was a little bit of smack talk, but not really as much. We were just kind of like, let's just fight. And the Gen Xers were the first generation actually of professional cage fighters who saw this, You know, I mean, it wasn't that we didn't like fighting. It was just like we go to these martial arts clubs and they'd be like, you got to bow to me and call me master. And they'd be looking at each other like, yeah, we're just going to lock ourselves in a cage and fight. Right, guys? So that's what happened. But yeah, I mean, this is a very base millennial. And this is what it kind of comes down to. This is what's going to carry us through this crisis. It all comes down to, well, as Neil Howe said, and the fourth turning is here, whether the millennials will follow anybody. And this guy seems to be on the right team. That's for damn sure. I love what he had to say here. He absolutely owned these guys, and it was glorious. Here is, because he was just talking about the seizing of the bank accounts, and here is Chrystia Freeland, the Wicked Witch of the WEF. And the meme here says, that look when you can't account for missing billions in taxpayer cash, but you can account for every dollar and any Canadian gave to a trucker. Yeah, that is exactly, I think, emblematic of the state of affairs here in Canada. They don't really care about, bringing prosperity to Canada. They care about suppressing dissidents and destroying their enemies. So that's Chrystia Freeland for you. Okay, and here is Noah Chartier from Epoch Times. And he says, Sean Strickland just now says there's no other UFC champion who went to bat for the Canadians. Quote, okay, I'm going to let Sean Strickland go ahead and say it. This was pretty awesome as well. This was a little bit later. I think it was the following day. So here we go.
You said a lot of things about Canada, but coming in here to that ovation, what does it feel like to be a hero to these people?
Man, now let me tell you guys something. And this is what the media doesn't understand when it comes to me and you guys and Australian fans. Let me tell you guys something. You guys don't care about me fighting. Yeah, me and Dreykus, we're going to have a death match. Someone's going to get their hand raised. Someone's going to get their hand raised. But when have you ever seen a UFC champion, George St. Pierre, or anybody else stick up for you fucking guys? I fucking do it. I do it. I am not chasing the Chinese check mark of Nike.
I really like that comment there. I'm not chasing the Chinese check mark of Nike. And that is kind of the battle that we're in too. It's also financial. There are so many financial incentives with the huge market in China. I mean, who was it? John Cena. I can't even remember what it was, but he somehow offended the Chinese people, and then he did a whole damn video in Mandarin with this blubbering apology to China for what he said. And of course, you saw LeBron James coming out there and chastising the rest of the NBA, saying, guys, you got to be really careful and you can't say bad stuff about China and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, everybody's been selling out, and this guy is like, screw you guys. No way. That's not what I'm all about, right? He's got some principles. That's great.
I don't give a about that. I care about you guys. I care about you guys being free. I care about you guys having freedom of speech. I give a fuck about you guys. And I'll tell you what, you guys are fucking awesome, and I cannot wait for me and this man to fucking go to war for you fucking guys. Let's go.
I love this guy. Okay, and here's Dana White, leading reporter saying, breaking, woke Canadian reporter tries to bait UFC President Dana White into commenting on some of former champion Sean Strickland's remarks, and it backfires. Okay, so he did in fact lose the bout. It was a 5th round decision, right? Like, it went the distance and it went to a decision. So here was Dana White's comments after the bout.
About, like, you obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone, and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
Like...
Free speech. Control what people say. Going to tell people what to believe. Going to tell people... I don't fucking tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want and they can believe whatever they want.
If about like,
Yeah, I think human dignity is what it really comes down to here, and humans don't belong on leashes. And Rob was just saying, and Dana is the model of what every boss should be. Yeah, I think so. And I just want to point to the difference here, of course, because I'm always using this generational lens. But with respect to the NBA and the WWF or whatever the hell that's called now, not like I care, but with the wrestlers and the basketball players, who owns the NBA? Well, the boomers own the NBA. And who owns the wrestling? The boomers do. Who owns UFC? Gen X does, right? This is Dana White. This is a leader in the revolution. The real revolution is generational. And who owns X? Well, Gen X owns X. So that is the difference, guys. Gen X owns X. And Facebook, I know we always think that that's Mark Zuckerberg, but he's just the CEO. He has a board of directors that he still answers to there, and that board of directors is boomers. And that's what made the difference with X as well, is that Gen X wrestled that away from the boomers, and now it's a free speech platform. So I know it still has some problems, but it's vastly better than it was, right? It was strictly just a psyop previously. So here is Son of a Bench. Give them a follow on Twitter. This is a pretty good account as well. And he says, would you pay to watch Justin Trudeau do a cage match with UFC's Sean Strickland? Listen to Sean describe the Canadian Prime Minister. Yes, please. Can we please have that? Let's see.
Are you going to challenge Trudeau to a cage match?
Oh yeah, no, he actually boxed once. Most pathetic thing on the planet.
Did he do it in blackface or was it?
God, man, this country, dude. You know what's funny? It's so weird because I know a lot of Canadians and they're all cool.
They're so cool.
They love guns. They like outdoor.
Every Canadian I know loves guns.
But like for some reason, you come here and it's just run by this coward of a man.
Yeah.
Like they take seized bank accounts, like
the whole truckers. And that upset me.
I mean, it's crazy. Like literally seized bank accounts. Like man. So yeah.
Are you going to challenge Trudeau to?
Yeah, could you imagine that cage match? I mean, it'll never happen, guys, but it would be very satisfying, I think, to watch Sean Strickland. Okay. So this one is a Rachel warning here. So here's Rachel Gilmore, and she says, looks like this MMA fighter is a big insecure baby who likes to punch down. Sean Strickland went on an unhinged anti-LGBTQ rant after a reporter had the audacity to ask him about things he said. Okay, whatever, guys. So anyway, we just saw, I think, a pretty strong female reporter interviewing Sean Strickland. It was all cool and everybody's having a good time. And here is this hateful wench, Rachel Gilmore, and what she had to say about it.
A professional athlete just said some of the most disgusting anti-gay, anti-trans bullshit I have ever heard. And so far, he has faced 0 consequences. Like his big money-making event is still set to take place, still at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, and it's still in 2 days. So TikTok, it might be time to do your thing. Let me tell you why. This human thumb, Sean Strickland.
You see what thugs they are? They want to go after people's income. They want to destroy businesses. This is fascism, right? The lucrative merger of corporation and state. And so the pro-statists, everybody who's in the state cult, this is how they think the world should work. If you don't bow down to the gods of their self-righteousness and abide in their dogma, then they'll just destroy you. It's a witch hunt, and the pitchforks are financial these days.
Yeah, the guy in the "Women Belong in the Kitchen" t-shirt. So original. He is an MMA fighter. And yesterday, MMA journalist Alexander Lee asked him about disgusting comments he had made in the past about the LGBTQ community. Specifically that time that Strickland said if he had a gay son, it would mean he failed as a man. This seems like a guy who's super secure in his masculinity. Anyways, before Lee could even finish his question, Strickland launched into a gnarly tirade. Here's a taste.
I don't understand what having a gay son has to do with your masculinity. But anyway, this is the way these frickin' wokesters think, right? It's all, you have to understand that they're not logical. They're not operating on the same principles that the rest of us are. It's all dogmatic, of course. So
are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
Okay. If you had a son and he was like, you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak fucking man, dude. You're part of the fucking problem.
Oh, but he didn't stop there. He also went on to attack the trans community.
10 years ago, to be trans was a mental fucking illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you have fucking weaseled your way in the world. You are an infection.
So he's attacking the reporter, not the trans community. And since he's already specified that he thinks of it as a mental illness, it doesn't sound like he's attacking the mentally ill either. So
you are the definition of weakness. You're right. Fucking chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that. The world's saying, no, there are two genders.
His comments were then praised on far-right messaging boards, where they said things like, absolutely savage, and I love this man, because there's nothing ballsier than attacking
I love this man.
vulnerable, marginalized communities. Now that is brave. Beyond a handful of articles and some mixed commentary online, this dude has emerged from this totally unscathed. And my question about that is, what
Because, that's free speech.
message are we sending to the trans community? What message does it send to the gay community? What message does it
Oh my God. You know what? I just so rarely actually listen to this person talk. And it's just, what message does that send to the gay community?
send to the far-right transphobes who are cheering this on and watching Scotiabank Arena welcome this human pimple with open arms? Is Toronto actually okay with this? My money's on no. So if you agree, I'd recommend you get loud about it.
I think they're okay with it. They would just want to watch a fight, for crying out loud. And it's nice to have somebody stick up for Canadians for a change.
Because call me crazy, I'm not cool with standing by while this chicken shit little bitch punches down. What do you think?
What do I think? I think he went after Trudeau, who is the leader of a country. So if you're saying that going after the leader of a country is punching down, that's just a tacit admission that Trudeau is actually just a schoolboy. He's not really a leader of the country. Like he's not strong enough. And as I'm always saying, he's clearly never had an original thought in his head. It's not like he's the one who's actually leading. He's just the sock puppet who reads the lines. Punching down, this athlete is punching down on the leader of a country. That's how backwards these people are. Okay. And here's what happened at the fight itself. This was also glorious. So here we go. So if you're having any trouble hearing that, the whole place, this whole Scotiabank Center, is blowing the roof off with chants of fuck Trudeau. So that is absolutely glorious to see. It fills my heart with hope. It's I think we're going to be okay, Canada. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better, but we got a lot of strong people around here, and people like, Rachel Gilmore are just going to starve soon enough anyway. So just keep getting jabbed. This is a self-correcting problem. Just keep taking those jabs, Rachel Gilmore. And Cindy is here saying she needs to go back to OnlyFans. Yes, well said. All right. And here is Jacob, and he's saying the best part is Trudeau's son was at the UFC fight this weekend. And so here he's tweeting out a screenshot of this account, Zav Trudeau _, Zav Scooter _, and he was actually tweeting out pictures of his view of the fight from the Scotiabank Center. And the caption here reads, Trudeau's son also posted this story of him watching the UFC match from a box seat. That is just the icing on the cake right there. Okay, and here is Contrarian. So yeah, Sean lost the decision. But I thought this was an interesting thread. I haven't seen the fight myself, so I can't really comment too much, but I understand a lot about, the scoring and so on and so forth. And I thought this was a pretty good thread that this guy put together here. It says, this is Contrarian on X, and he says, looks like Canada has a new hero. And for anyone that thought he lost the fight, check the strikes in the thread. So he is doing a quick thread here. And here we have, he's got a screen cap of somebody else's account here, Richard A. Mann. And it says, Sean Strickland outlanded Dricus Duplessis 173 to 137 on significant strikes. And he had an edge in 4 of the 5 rounds. Rounds 2, 3, and 4 were all extremely close numerically, but this seems to be a fight decided by impact of strikes and not simply the count. So that is the kind of thing. I mean, with the 10-point must system that comes from boxing. If it were an amateur boxing fight, it would just be number of strikes landed. But there is also the impact of strikes to consider. And there are other things like, octagon control and effective takedowns, stuff like that goes into it. So it is, one of these sports that is judged. So there's that element of subjectivity to it. And it looks like it was actually a really close fight when you're going by the numbers here. And anyway, it was a great performance, and hopefully we get to see a rematch, and hopefully they bring him back to Canada for that rematch. That'd be great. Okay. And here is Eva Chipwick, and she's saying Deputy Prime Minister Freeland appears incoherent, just like her policies. Canada, we deserve better, but we need to put in the time to get educated and involved. Comment below if you think you could do a better job, and then tell us what you think you would do to get involved. Okay, so here is Strickland, and she's rambling incoherently at the press corps, and here we go.
This is the third cabinet.
Oh my God, what's up with her teeth? Like, she is not doing well. Are those cracked teeth or something? What's going on with that?
Retreat at least in a row where you've said that affordability and housing prices and inflation are sort of your key topics of conversation. A year later, at least with 3 cabinet retreats, Canadians don't seem to be buying whatever message you're selling on it. Why are Canadians not believing that your government has the solutions?
Last question.
The answer is because they don't. They've never solved anything.
You're right. This has been an incredibly challenging economic period. And it's one of the things we've spoken about. And I think all of us need to step back a little bit and look at the economic roller coaster.
All of whom? She's talking about frickin' Canadians here. No, you're the one in charge. It's your responsibility.
Our country and all of us have been through adding an energy shock to that. As a result of these supply chain shocks, of the energy shock, we had high inflation. And
these are all problems that they inflicted on us with lockdowns and the like.
then the next shoe to drop, I guess I have more shocks than I have shoes, but the next wave to hit was then high interest rates in response to high inflation.
RJ Sawyer over in Rumbles let me know that they're meth teeth. I mean, I can't tell. I've never done crack or meth, so but I would be interested in knowing what it is exactly that she's smoking.
So I don't think it is at all surprising that Canadians are exhausted, that Canadians have economic whiplash. It has been a really hard time, and it has been one thing after another. One unprecedented.
She thinks she's Canada's mom. Just listen to the way that she talks to us.
In the lifetime, of certainly a person who didn't live through the First World War. One unprecedented shock after another.
Okay, so Chris has also let me know that Chris Dacey has let me know meth 100%. Okay, all right. The jury is out on this one, guys, and it's meth. So meth head Chrystia Strickland, the Wicked Witch of the WEF. There she is, babbling incoherently. And can you even remember what the question was when they started? Well, the question was, how come Canadians aren't buying this idea that you guys are acting in their best interest, basically? Actually, I'll go right back.
This is the third cabinet retreat at least in a row where you've said that affordability and housing prices and inflation are sort of your key topics of conversation. A year later, at least with 3 cabinet retreats, Canadians don't seem to be buying whatever message you're selling on it. Why are Canadians not believing that your government has the solutions?
Why are Canadians not believing that your government has solutions? And like I said, it's because they don't have any solutions. They've never solved anything. What have they solved? The only damn thing they ever managed to do was legalize weed and, force the sexual butchery of children on Canadian families by threatening to jail any parent who tries to protect their child from such a fate. So they've been really good for pharmaceutical companies and the banks, but when it comes to solving problems for Canadians, they just don't have any solutions. And what I find interesting about this as well is just listen to the tone on this reporter. Oh my God, look at those meth teeth, everybody. You see how methy those teeth look? Stimulant use is widespread, says Dacey. And That was something that we saw in the Third Reich as well. They were very well known for being, a bunch of stimulant abusers and stuff like that, having all kinds of orgies. And of course, we're back in another fourth turning. So that's what's happening right now. Meth teeth, my Lord, look at them. So just listen to the tone on this reporter, though. This sounds like perhaps a reforming wokester. So listen to her.
This is the third cabinet retreat, at least in a row, where you've.
Maybe it's a card cabinet. She doesn't sound like, a right winger exactly. She sounds like she's probably woke. And maybe there's a conversion taking place here.
Said that affordability and housing prices and inflation are sort of your key topics of conversation. A year later.
See how she's all like naggy and judgy in the way that she asks? Yeah. So anyway, I think that's interesting. The press is definitely turning on her. And it's not like this is a True North reporter or, Rebel News asking this question. I guess Sheila Gunn Reid would kind of sound like that, very shrill. But yeah, that's my impression anyways. This seems to be somebody who would normally count themselves as part of Strickland's base, and she's absolutely livid with her. She's had enough. Okay, here is a post from Tucker that Keith Wilson is sharing out. Check this out. He put this on his Instagram, I guess.
Thank you for your call. You have reached the media line. For all urgent requests, please send your request by email. Merci pour votre appel. Vous avez atteint la ligne médiatique. Merci beaucoup.
Yes, hi. I couldn't understand the French part, but it's Tucker Carlson calling from the United States. And I'd be grateful if you pass a message on to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. We are coming to liberate Canada. We are coming to liberate Canada. And we'll be there soon. Merci.
Yeah. So Gen Xer Tucker Carlson and America as well. I mean, I've been saying like America's going to lead the way out of this thing. So, and they're taking a special interest in Canada. So I think that really works in our favor. And Kim is saying, freeloader needs to go back to the compounds in SA. We can't stand her face, voice, or that we pay for her. Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God, just terrible. And Shiloh over in Rumble is saying also they have changed bail in order to release violent criminals while keeping pastors locked up. Yes, whatever weakens the West is true. That's all part of the strategy to destabilize Canada. Is you just lock up all the good people, all the good patriots out there, and just let all the banes of society wreak havoc and run wild. Okay, and what is Tucker going to liberate us from? Well, here is Andy Lee, and she's tweeting out, as food bank use skyrockets, Justin Trudeau takes time out of his busy schedule for a photo op. It's posted on, quote, Van People's, close quote, WeChat. And of course, WeChat is the Chinese app that the Chinese Communist Party uses to propagandize and coerce, leverage the Chinese diaspora to target conservative MPs for special animus and to help swing our elections and control our democracy. So she says, she also says, one account is run from Canada. The other has an IP address in Beijing. Created in 2018, it was used to attack Aaron O'Toole in the last election. Yeah, that's right. So this is what's coming out on WeChat. As I've been saying, Justin Trudeau is Beijing's man at 24 Sussex, and here he is doing his food bank appearance. Now he's at a grocery store, not a food bank, but still, this is probably a pretty upscale, freaking grocery store.
加拿大总理特鲁多现身华人超市，你对今年小土豆的表现打几分？
Taking a picture with the Chinese lady. Everything's in those idiot Chinese squiggles, and they're speaking in presumably Mandarin. Look at Beijing's man here, just a man of his constituency, shaking hands with all the Chinese diaspora and probably some CCP assets here somewhere. Maybe they just sent a bunch of United Front types to do this photo op with him. Who knows?
临近年末，加拿大总理特鲁多现身华人。
Daisy says, I'm going to take that Tucker clip and go blast it outside of Trudeau's office this week. Yes, please do. And make sure you get lots of videos so we can talk about it on our next Muckraker. And here is the Van People account to which she is referring. And as you can see, here is Aaron O'Toole. This is not a very flattering photo of him. And they got those idiot Chinese squiggles all over the place again, probably instructing CCP supporters in the diaspora to go out there and target him. And she's given us, all the details from the account. So, yeah, that is what Tucker would be liberating us from. It's from CCP control. All right. And here we go. This is the Bureau, Sam Cooper. This is his blog there on what the heck is this thing called again? It's anyway, the blog thing. Okay, so here is the title is Canada Should Learn from quote unquote unprecedented Chinese interference in Taiwan's election. Ambassador Harry Sen told reporters Xi Jinping's regime is increasingly aggressive and troubled from within. And this is a theme that I've been talking about as well. I think this is probably our best hope, is that Xi Jinping is such a brutal dictator that he has lost a lot of support even within China and within the Chinese Communist Party. He's been disappearing senior officials. He fired all the generals, had them all replaced. He disappeared one of the biggest billionaires over there for a little while, and this guy just reappeared magically, won't tell anybody where he was, and he's only half as wealthy as he used to be. So yeah, it's pretty hard to maintain any genuine loyalty with those kind of tactics. And it's probably, I think, probably our best hope right now is that they just kind of fall apart from within. And it's kind of a terrible thing to hope for, because I think they're probably headed for collapse and famine if that happens, but that also puts them on a war footing and makes them all the more desperate to go after Taiwan. And I reported here, I showed a clip from some dissidents, some Chinese dissidents who were in the know a while ago, and they were talking about how sometime in the next couple of weeks, so I think this week would be within that time frame, the next couple of weeks, they could make a move on Taiwan. That seems to be the rumbling. So who knows? Who knows what could happen? But anyway, I'm not going to panic over it or anything like that. I do think that I'm always most concerned with China in all of this, and it seems that the cracks are forming over there, and they have the same problem that we do. The boomers must be stopped. Xi Jinping's the boomer, and the generation coming up behind him, their Gen Xers were the kids of Tiananmen Square and the kids of one-child policy. So. Yeah, I can imagine there's probably a lot of dissent within the Gen X generation over in China. Okay, here's the article. Reports of Xi Jinping's growing purge of senior officials from China's elite rocket force indicate Xi is facing mounting rebellions within the Chinese Communist Party, Taiwan senior diplomat in Ottawa said Tuesday. Harry Sen, formerly a top national security official for Taiwan, addressed a range of issues with Canadian reporters in the wake of Taiwan's presidential election. The incumbent DPP pro-sovereignty candidate Lai Ching-te won with 40% of the vote, but opposition parties favored by Beijing gained seats in the legislature. Quote, this election, Chinese interference was unprecedented, close quote, Tseng told reporters, adding that Canada should learn from Taiwan's experience in countering China's election meddling. Yeah, if Taiwan can do it when they're like within eye shot across the Strait of Taiwan on a clear day from China, they're just offshore. They're right there, right next to China. If they can do it, if they can extirpate themselves from this Chinese trap, then so can we. Okay. Quote, there's a lack of understanding in Canada of Taiwan as a democracy, and there's even more lack of knowledge of what China is about, close quote, Singh said. Quote, this is going to backfire on you. If you are hoping to cooperate with China, just how many lessons do you need to see, close quote. Taiwan, yeah, there's no cooperation. They're only interested in dominating. Taiwan recognized during its 2018 election that Chinese communist interference was rapidly escalating, and Beijing was, quote, reaping the benefits of cognitive warfare to divide our society, close quote, Singh said. Does that sound familiar, guys? Sound familiar? Yeah, this is the art of war described in the 5th century BC by Sun Tzu. That's what he talks about. Chapter 13, the use of spies. It has everything to do with polarizing a society, capturing elites, turning the state against its people, people against the state. And we'll all be too busy at each other's throats to pay any attention to that man behind the curtain as they come in and scoop up all the property. They'll just buy us out and own us. Okay. In response, Taiwan's legislature quickly acted, passing its new Anti-Infiltration Act in 2019. Among a range of clearly defined crimes, this counter-interference law says that any person interfering for, quote, foreign hostile forces, close quote, in Taiwan's elections, including making political donations at the direction of foreign entities, can be jailed for up to 5 years. Yeah, that sounds like a good piece of legislation. Meanwhile, Taiwan learned much of Beijing's interference comes through manipulation and funding of media entities tasked to disseminate sophisticated disinformation. Sound familiar? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Seng in Taiwan has found that Beijing's plants media companies that initially report on news and social matters, just like credible websites do, in order to gain followers. Yeah, but these sites are later weaponized to post, quote, fake news, close quote, and sow confusion in elections and national security matters. This past election, Beijing's psychological warfare reached a new level of technological mastery, Seng said. He cited examples including spreading of a quote-unquote deepfake video, which saw Lai, the presidential candidate China tried to defeat, quote, claiming the opposition party represented the majority view, close quote. Websites funded and controlled by China also use artificial intelligence and chatbots to spread disinformation virally, Seng said, such as a claim the U.S. government had ordered Taiwan's military to produce biological weapons. Beijing's efforts were not futile, but Taiwan's democracy proved remarkably resilient, and the election was deemed to be free and fair, Seng said. This is partly because during the past 5 years, Taiwan's various ministries have learned to work seamlessly with its intelligence agencies to rapidly counter Beijing's narratives with facts. Policy to counter disinformation includes what Taiwan's government calls the quote-unquote triple tool rule. Quote, you don't want to tackle disinformation at the expense of democracy, Seng said. Quote, we try to tell people no when disinformation has to do with national security. So if you are the responsible government agency, you must respond to fake news within 2 hours, close quote. And the response must be concise, 200 words in length or less, and easily understood, including 2 infographics. Meanwhile, that's a pretty good strategy. It's a good social media strategy, right? It's basically a tweet. Meanwhile, Beijing appears to be increasingly fragile. A superpower, Seng argued to reporters in Ottawa. 2 days after Lai's win in the tiny but strategically placed island nation of Nauru severed its diplomatic relations with Taiwan, which, according to Seng, indicates Beijing's retaliation and control of Nauru's corrupt politicians. Sounds familiar, right? But Xi has deep corruption problems of his own, Seng believes. He pointed to the snowballing story from last year's Xi's purge of at least 70 ministry and military leaders linked to China's rocket force and other sectors of the People's Liberation Army. This website is called Substack, by the way. It finally hit me. Initial reports that one senior Chinese minister vanished due to a leak of intelligence from the rocket force clearly underestimated the challenges Xi faces from within, Seng said. Quote, this is a collective action, a rebellion of some sort, close quote, Seng said. Quote, to say that Xi does not face a challenge from inside the Communist Party or the military is oversimplifying things. The scale of this purge tells us about the scale of corruption and disobedience that Xi is now facing, close quote. Meanwhile, the world can expect Beijing to ramp up its theater of military threats against Taiwan in the coming weeks, Seng said. And Taiwan's military is preparing for the worst. The consensus among Taiwan's leaders and military thinkers in the United States is that Taiwan's military must be ready to repel landed forces from Beijing for at least 3 weeks if Xi decides to attack before firepower from combined forces of the United States and Japan can fully enter the battle. Quote, we are racing against time, close quote, Seng said. Nazak Nekakaktar, former assistant secretary to the U.S. Department of Commerce, told the Bureau that Beijing will increase efforts to influence Taiwan's society and economy. Quote, China is certainly frustrated with the DPP's win, close quote. Nekakaktar wrote in an email answer. Quote, that said, China understands quite well that it has the power to leverage the divided government in order to exert substantial pressure on Taiwan, at a minimum, halt the DPP's move toward independence, close quote. They sure like those minority governments, the Chinese Communist Party, don't they? And that was what they wanted going into our 2021 election. They wanted a liberal minority government, and that's exactly what they got. Quote, should Taiwan's integration with mainland China happen, the supply chain impacts on the United States and our allies and trading partners is significant, close quote. Nekak Akhtar added, quote, the raw materials and electronic component supply chains that we need to manufacture every high-tech item in the world, from telecommunications equipment and computers to aircraft, vehicles, and military weapons will be lost, close quote. Yeah, and that is why Taiwan is of such strategic importance globally. They don't sell their advanced manufactured chips to China because that would vastly improve their military. But we in the West, the Americans, they use that chip technology. And if China gets ahead of it, or if China gets a hold of it, then it could be a game changer. Whether or not like that would actually work, like we're talking about invading a country and forcing these people to do your bidding. So, and you know, serfs rarely produce to a high quality. That's part of the reason why the Soviet Union didn't work, because you know, any patriot, any loving patriot is going to be 10 conscripts any day, and that's why the West always wins when it comes to militarily, of course. Okay. And here is Veterans for Freedom, and they're saying subversion of the CAF is well underway and possibly almost complete. Yeah, this is also a part of the strategy. They just decimate our militaries with a bunch of woke nonsense and leave us vulnerable for this authoritarian takeover. Here we go.
Good morning. My name is Matt Lohmeyer, and I'm an Air Force Academy.
This is from the United States, by the way. They're talking about wokeness in the U.S. military, and yeah, Veterans for Freedom, we're tweeting this sucker out to show the parallels.
A graduate, former F-15C fighter pilot, and was a lieutenant colonel and commander in the Space Force. In 2021, I was fired from my command for writing a book trying to reverse the trend of the overt political.
Rob is letting us know that for Taiwanese elections, all voters produce a picture ID. There is no mail-in voting. All voting is done on paper ballots, and they allow anyone and everyone to view the ballots being counted. That is the way it has to be done. Paper only. None of this crap that happened in the American election where they closed they stopped the count at 10 p.m. in all the swing states and didn't pick it up again until 10 a.m. the following day. It was like, oh, look at these like massive boxes full of tens of thousands of votes for Biden. Look at that. So yeah, we need to secure our elections first and foremost. Otherwise, we're not going to stand a chance. So, there we go.
Politicization of the uniformed services. Specifically, I criticized the military's diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, which at my own base were illegally occurring despite an executive order from the commander-in-chief. The diversity, equity, and inclusion industry is steeped in critical race theory and is rooted in anti-American Marxist ideology. I watched DEI trainings divide our troops ideologically and in some cases sow the seeds of animosity toward the very country they had sworn an oath to defend.
And that is what's happening in the CAF. I watched it with my own eyes. They brought in the microaggressions training. That's critical theory, straight out of the playbook of Michel Foucault. And I watched it polarize the leadership team of my last unit in Ottawa there. And the next thing you know, it was the boomers were going after this one Gen Xer who asked an innocent question, like, what am I doing wrong? Exactly. I feel like you're saying I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, and it turned into this goddamn struggle session where this guy, like, he's actually a very sweet man and an excellent officer. And he was just feeling so dejected by the whole thing where they were just gaslighting him into thinking he was some kind of racist that he kind of shut down a little bit. I remember I kind of stepped in once they were done publicly flogging him in front of his peers, and I was like, yeah, I didn't hear any of that from what Chris just said. So and I said they were like, oh yeah, what did you hear, Sergeant Major? And I was like, well, I heard that he just performed a gender-based analysis plus on the situation and determined that this individual's cultural background was intersecting with his military background in a way that reinforced his leadership style. And they shut them right up. And I was just like, yeah, shut the hell up. You guys just gave us the GBA plus training like a year ago, and now you've completely flipped it on its head and it's the opposite now. and we're all like awful people for not keeping up or something. Give me a break. But that's how it works, right? You're in the churn. It's you can't even know, like, up is down and down is up. You can't know right is wrong, wrong is right. And it's like, well, if you don't stay on top of the ever-changing dogma, then you're a heretic and you'll be singled out for the witch hunt.
Before writing that book, I submitted a formal written complaint to the Space Force Inspector General's office detailing that such violations were occurring, including illegal race-based discrimination, but my complaint was never investigated and was later dismissed by then Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting, whom the Senate just confirmed for his 4th star. After 2 months, I received a written dismissal of my complaint from General Whiting. Personally, I have always advocated for a non-political military work environment. Today, I'm here to testify about the ongoing Marxist-inspired efforts to subvert and weaken our military and broader American society. We often refer to these efforts as wokeism, but it is also a culture war. Yet even in this committee, there are differing views about whether there is such a thing as a culture war underway. Some members of this committee have been outspoken critics of DEI initiatives to include CRT, drag shows on military bases, trans activism, LGBTQ pride celebrations, and woke military recruiting videos, all things that are visible components of an ongoing culture war.
Very visible in the CAF as well. I mean, the chief of defense staff, that cock General Vance, who cemented his legacy as our longest serving CDS, even up to retirement age, so he could stay even longer, and basically gaslit all the troops for exactly the kind of sexual deviance that he'd been up to his entire career. He fathered 2 children with one of his staff officers that he never took any responsibility for. And he would go out and march in the Pride Parade. It's supposed to be an apolitical institution. It has to be. It's absolutely critical to democracy, lest we become Egypt.
Ranking Member Garcia, as he just mentioned, on the other hand, and asserted as recently as 2 weeks ago, says that the culture wars are quote-unquote phony and are merely a political talking point of Republicans. It's nothing if not incredible for a member of this subcommittee to assert that culture wars are phony, while another member, who's not present at the moment, of this committee is a member of the so-called Progressive Squad, was herself a Black Lives Matter organizer and activist, an organization whose publicly avowed ideology is Marxism, and whose activist ambition is social and cultural revolution. Service members who wear the uniform of their country do not want to see these things in the military workplace. They don't want to see them at their bases. In most cases, this is true regardless of their race or their political worldview. Despite that reality, Pentagon officials requested $140 million to expand woke diversity initiatives in fiscal year 2024, double what it's been the previous 2 years. There are few things taxpayers such as myself feel less essential to the mission of the United States military than expanding diversity mandates and indoctrination. And now an important point. Such aggressively opposed ideological worldviews competing for institutionalization through policy epitomizes and formalizes what is properly termed a culture war. The fact that these debates now infect the U.S. military workplace is an offense to people like me who love their country and all people regardless of their race, gender, sexual preference, or background.
Well said. Again, the Americans are leading the way here. Yeah, I am vastly appreciative of the special interest that they take in Canada. And as we can see, like these are problems that are all across the West. Like I think that a big part of why we had the October 7th massacre was also because they have a woke military at this particular time. And that's just what happens. A woke military is not a capable military. And okay, so here is Veterans for Freedom again, and they're saying this lady will probably be the person to replace Woke Weiner as CDS. That's Chief of Defense Staff. And they want to claim that they, quote, appointed the first female CDS ever. We are just so diverse, close quote. We aren't a serious country. And this is, it says, the CAF has embraced social justice and principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, for its cultural change. They previously told the Epoch Times that they're in part drawing from critical race theory and quasi-Marxist ideology to guide the change. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong, guys? Quote, diversity is a superpower, close quote, Lieutenant General Kerrigan told reporters. Amid the cultural change, the CAF is experiencing high attrition and low recruitment numbers. Gee, I wonder why. And here is Lieutenant General Jeannie Kerrigan. Now, if memory serves, I think, yeah, this was the same general. She wasn't a lieutenant general at the time. I guess she would have been probably a major general in 2019. But I was in Iraq in 2019, and I'm pretty sure that Joker Jeannie here was the one who tried pushing the woke nonsense on the Iraqis in Baghdad. Some garbage about how women are better than they are, or something like that. And she got like the Arab level based response of, no, that's not how you treat women. Go color in the color there, or go color in the corner there, Joker Jeannie. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised though if she ended up getting it. And speaking of where all this woke nonsense really leads, here's Valor Legal. It's dehumanizing, right? It pits us all against each other. They've got a new tribe at the helm right now, and this tribe hates the rest of us, anybody who doesn't abide in the woke dogma, blah, 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 blah. And here is Valor Legal saying, standing up for your Section 7 rights under the charter gets you physically tortured in the CAF. And here's Major Hardy. Private didn't go for the donut, as in he didn't take the killer jab. And she made him stand out in the cold here. Maybe 6 weeks of hypothermia will convince him. Now, you couldn't even do this to a prisoner of war, for crying out loud. And look at this frumpy major. They're sadists is what it is. Once you get the mind virus, then all bets are off. I mean, you're the good person. So if you do it, then it is good, right? Okay, and speaking of where this woke nonsense leads and how this is all a plot to just destroy the West from within, here is Proud Army Brat, and they say, this is Lukeville, Arizona. Look at all of these illegal males from Islamic African countries. This is Mexican, South American immigration, guys. Is this what's happening? No, I don't think so. It's part of a broader plot. I mean, somebody's funding these people. They got to cross the Atlantic to get here, and they're coming in by the hordes. Like, look at this. So just too many Africans to even see in this shot. It's just incredible. Like, so they're not Mexicans that are coming in at the southern border, guys. It's got nothing to do with, helping anybody either. It's got everything to do with destroying the West. And I don't think that immigration to the West is the solution to any problems of the world at all. So here is Radio Genoa, and they're saying cultural enrichers attack Britain. Why are they always so violent? Now, my answer here is Marxism. It's right there. Marxism. They hate the West. That is what does. I mean, and they've been inflicting this psyop in Africa for the longest time. Marxist psyops, anti-colonial BS. It traces its roots back to the Russian propaganda they've been pushing on Africans for the longest time. And of course, it is the African National Congress that's in power in South Africa as the genocide against the white Boers is well underway. They were a terrorist organization. That's why Nelson Mandela went to prison. It's because he was the leader of a terrorist organization, a Marxist terrorist organization. It's not because of racism or anything like that. It's because they were killing people in some of the most heinous possible ways. Anyway, it's now that terrorist organization is running South Africa. And the rest of the African continent, has all kinds of problems as well. And they've been subjected to this Marxist psyop for decades. So they hate the West.
Fucking no, that struck. Dude, stop it. Stop it. Okay. Stop it.
He looks like he's holding something in his belt. He's got some kind of a bag there, probably a knife.
Stop it.
And he's wearing a mask.
Man.
Because he doesn't want to give anybody COVID, right?
Stop it! Stop it, you fucking hell, man! No! Stop it! Stop it! Fucking hell! Stop it! No! Fucking hell, that struck!
Good Lord. Yeah, that looks like he's probably got a weapon there up under his jacket, as you can see. So, yeah. And I like how they call them cultural enrichers. Yeah, that is, if you believe in borders and securing our territory so that the people who live here are safe, then you're a racist. That's the whole psyop right there. So, and speaking of how insecure we're getting here in Canada, here is Hussein E. and he's saying armed home invasion in Mississauga caught on video. Now, I don't know that the people involved in this are cultural enrichers, but this is pretty alarming. Check it out.
An absolutely terrifying moment for this Mississauga family. 5 armed men come in for a home invasion, dressed completely in black, overnight at his home. They come to his front door and they're about to break in. Here's the lead criminal. He's going ahead and kicking down the door, trying to break it down. He can't do that. He's got an axe. He's going to break the glass beside the door and open the door for all his criminal friends to come in. The owner shared his story with me. He got awoken at night, 2:30 a.m., and he was scared, terrified. But what he managed to do to protect his family was scare these criminals away. Again, armed with weapons, and one's actually discharged his pistol. Now they all run away. The owners managed to intimidate them and scare them away. They run. The one criminal is going to go ahead and pop his pistol just above here. He pops it up, and now they're going to the getaway car. Absolutely insane. Let me show you guys on the replay, zooming in. They're all scurrying now to the getaway car, and the one criminal is going to go ahead and pop his pistol. I don't know why he did that. The shell casing was found, but they went ahead into the escape vehicle. And here's another view from a neighbor of their escape. This is happening all across Canada. Crime is skyrocketing. Home invasions, car thefts. The punishment is not enough for these criminals. We have to do something.
Yep, that's right. And Freedom Warriors over on X is saying, those people have been sent here to create the civil unrest that you all won't do. Yeah, it is about civil unrest. Now, again, we don't really know who's involved in this one, so I can't say that they're necessarily cultural enrichers, but this is the kind of like the catch and release policies facilitate a lot of this too. That was the strategy that Obama employed, and we've imported that to Canada now, where we let the murderers back out on the street the same day, but the Coots 4, the Patriots, are still locked up. Jesus, like 700 days later now, and without bail and the whole shebang in a remand facility. Like, it's just they will torture the Patriots and give these cultural enrichers and the various violent aspects of our society, the pat on the back and the pass. Okay, and here's another component of the whole thing as well, because I really think that this climate change BS is a psyop to weaken the West, right, to destroy us economically. So here's the CBC. It's a quick look back. Climate change fueling Nova Scotia wildfires, say ecologists, climate activists. 2 wildfires in the province have displaced about 20,000 people. Ecologists and climate change activists are urging officials to recognize the links between Nova Scotia's wildfires and climate change. Yeah, okay, CBC. It was climate change that set those fires. Well, here's CTV, and this is from January 18th. Man, 22 charged in connection with largest wildfire in Nova Scotia history. Yeah, that's just like I was saying. While those fires were raging, it's arson, guys. We're under attack. Arson. And this was why I was in court yesterday, because the Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables here in Nova Scotia, the only jurisdiction, everybody was on fire. The whole country was on fire. And this is the only jurisdiction that banned entry into the woods for all of its citizens within the province. I was sitting here in, my little neighborhood here in Cape Breton, like, what fire? What are you talking about? I'd have to drive about 8 hours to get to that fire. So, but I wasn't allowed to walk my dog in the park. All right, I'll read a little bit of this. Nova Scotia's Natural Resource Department says a 22-year-old man has been charged in connection with a massive wildfire in Shelburne County last spring. Dalton Clark Stewart of Village Dale is charged Wednesday under the Forest Act with lighting a fire on privately owned land without permission of the owner or occupier, failing to take reasonable efforts to prevent the spread of a fire, leaving a fire unattended. You know, that sounds like arson. Why don't we see arson right there in the list of charges? Well, I think it's because the heavy hand is reserved for the patriots and not for the subverters. Stewart is scheduled to appear in Shelburne Provincial Court on March 7th. The charges stem from the Barrington Lake wildfire, which first broke out on May 26, 2023, and was finally brought under control on June 13th and extinguished on July 26th. The fire grew to 23,379 hectares, the largest recorded in the province's history. It forced more than 6,000 people from their homes and destroyed 60 houses and cottages, as well as 150 other structures. It was the last in a string of spring wildfires in the province to be tamed. Now, why are we still calling them wildfires when we know that they're arson? Quote, it is a relief. I mean, I knew they were arson from the start, but now everybody knows, right? Quote, it is a relief to see the justice system working for the people of the area that was put out by the wildfires, close quote, said Eddie Nickerson, warden of Barrington District 4. Quote, it was pretty devastating for the area. We have never experienced anything like that. As you know, it was the biggest wildfire in the history of the province, close quote. Quote, these investigations are complex in nature, and we want to ensure that we are thoroughly investigating any piece of evidence or any lead that we have. I understand it's been a while, but we need to be sure that we are thorough, close quote, adds Orlando Fraser, conservation officer with the Natural Resources Department. Fraser said he does not expect any additional charges to come out of the Barrington Lake wildfire investigation. And the Tantalon fire was another just incredible affair. So the Tantalon wildfire update. The Natural Resources Department says it also continues to investigate the 2023 Tantalon area wildfire, which burned 969 hectares. Quote, while the department has gathered considerable information, there is a high bar for what can be used as evidence in court, close quote, reads a Thursday news release from the province. The fire burned in the suburbs of north of Halifax between May 28th and June 4th. It destroyed 151 homes and at its peak forced the evacuation of 16,000. It was fully extinguished on July 26th. Last month, the Nova Scotia RCMP said there was insufficient evidence to indicate the fire was the result of arson. Quote, we concluded our file in September and provided this information to the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, DNRR, as the lead investigating agency, close quote. Constable Dominic Laflemme told CTV News in an email on December 29th, 2023, quote, we continue to liaise with them and are available to provide assistance as required, close quote. Those convicted of violating the Forests Act can be fined up to $50,000 and or face up to 6 months in prison. Holy smokes, 50 grand for entering the woods against Tory Rushton's proclamation banning entry into the woods all over the province. I'll tell you a little bit about the court appearance I had there yesterday in a minute. But here's Bob Zimmer, MP, and he says, quote, on the island, we haven't had any natural cause fires. All 46 have been human caused, close quote, said Jade Richardson, Fire Information Officer with the Coastal Fire Center, close quote. Interesting. Yeah, isn't that interesting? And this is Vancouver, guys. So Vancouver was on fire. We know the Quebec fires were arson. We know that Danielle Smith brought in arson investigators for all the fires that were taking place there. And we're under attack, okay? And the elites aren't telling us this. So you might want to ask yourself why that is. I mean, I know why it is. It's because of the elite capture that the Chinese Communist Party engages in. Okay, so here's what publication is this? Is it Guardian? Okay, so here's the Guardian, and they say Nova Scotia man charged with starting province's largest ever wildfire. Dalton Clark Stewart, 22, accused of lighting Canada's Barrington fire, which burned for 1 month in 2023. A Nova Scotia man has been charged for allegedly starting the Eastern Province's largest ever wildfire. The charges against Dalton Clark Stewart, 22, come only days after a Quebec man inspired by conspiracy theories pleaded guilty to 14 charges of arson after deliberating lighting forest fires. Now, the conspiracy theories thing, I'm not so sure about that. It's probably just that inverted paradigm where a bunch of leftists are going around lighting these fires, and they want to make it sound like it's right-wingers. Stewart from the town of Villagedale, I can't say that, is facing 3 violations of the province's Forest Act: lighting a fire on privately owned land without permission of the owner-occupier, failing to blah, 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 everything but arson. So that is suspicious. Quote, the court will determine the outcomes of these charges, including any penalties, close quote. Nova Scotia's Natural Resources Department said in a statement. The wildfire near Barrington caught the attention of officials in May. Unseasonably dry conditions and strong winds helped it grow to 23,525 hectares, shattering a 5-decade record of pushing Nova Scotia's scarce firefighting resources to the brink. It also degraded the region's air quality, with Environment Canada issuing a warning for nearby communities. For a province that typically measures the total amount of the region burned in hundreds of hectares, Barrington Lake Fire also highlighted the vulnerability of the Atlantic province to wildfires. You think our enemies understand that? I mean, they study the hell out of us, right? In June, the Nova Scotia Premier, Tim Houston, said he had asked the federal government for military firefighters, military firefighters, ignition specialists, firefighting equipment, including hoses and foam, as well as trucks and helicopters. The Barrington Lake Fire burned for 1 month before fire crews declared it extinguished. Elsewhere in the province, crews scrambled to save homes as separate blazes moved perilously close to Halifax, the region's largest city. Investigators also studied the Tantalon fire, which destroyed nearly 115 homes and forced 18,000 people from their homes, to see if they could find any criminal liability. The RCMP said it closed its investigation in December, according to CBC News, concluding there was, quote, no information to suggest the cause was due to negligence or criminal matter, close quote. Yeah, right. But on Thursday, the province's Natural Resources Department said it was continuing to investigate the fire. Quote, while the department has gathered considerable information, there is a high bar for what can be used as evidence in court, close quote, it said in a statement. In its last report of 2023, the Canadian Interagency Fire Centre said 6,551 fires burned, 18,496,057 hectares of land, compared with 1,467,976 hectares burned the prior year. In Nova Scotia, that meant 24,818 hectares burned from 217 fires. Ha! So sounds like they've really been ramping up the leftist lunacy in the wake of COVID in particular. Notice how we didn't even have Drag Queen Story Hour like prior to COVID, and now we have Drag Queen Story Hour and arson attacks. Okay, and just a look back, like this is what they were up to. This was June 10th, 2023, as the fires were raging. Nova Scotia women fined nearly $29,000 for outdoor fire. Police say, so they blame us, like it's an arson attack. We knew it was an arson attack, and it's the same kind of scapegoating that we saw during COVID. It's like, we all know this was released from a lab, and China's engaged in a psyop with this thing. Never let a good crisis go to waste, as Saul Alinsky said, after all. And like we could all see what it was, but the government, our officials, went around saying that it was all our fault that there was a pandemic because we didn't take enough of their killer jabs, and our masks weren't up covering our noses and all this stuff. So it's our fault that there's a pandemic. So we got arsonists on the loose, and they're saying that it's the average citizen's fault for having an unsupervised outdoor fire in the midst of a province-wide fire ban. There were no fire bans in place anywhere in the province right up until that fire started. None. And I reported on this here at the time. There was a few zones that were in the yellow. My zone, all of Cape Breton and the northern mainland, they were all in the green. Everything else was yellow or green. So no red anywhere in the province. RCMP Corporal Chris Marshall says officers responded to reports of an open fire on private property on Friday afternoon in the community of Lance, about 50 kilometers north of Halifax. Marshall says they found an unsupervised fire burning in a fire pit that used a hose to douse the flames. He said they gave a woman in the home on the property a ticket for igniting a blaze within 300 meters of the woods during a fire ban, which carries a fine of $28,872.50. Wow. Better make sure you get that 50 cents in there. And of course, that was another thing that they did too. It used to be like a $300 to $500 fine for having a fire while a fire ban was in effect. And because of these arsonists, they increased the fines, like, freaking 50-fold here, or 500-fold, and it was just unfreaking real. And here's what was happening. This is June 2nd, 2023. So that article was from June 10th, and this is June 2nd. Pictou County District RCMP investigating arsons. This is a press release. Corporal Chris Marshall. Isn't this the same guy? Right? Here's Chris Marshall handing out a goddamn $30,000 fine to a woman who had nothing to do with the arsons that he wrote about in the Pictou County District RCMP investigation. Oh my God. So yeah, it's climate change, guys. It's our cars that cause these fires, and you need to pay $30,000 for having a little bonfire in your backyard when they knew full well there were arsonists on the loose. Pictou County District RCMP is investigating 3 separate arson scenes in Pictou County. At approximately 1:30 a.m. this morning, Pictou County District RCMP and fire responded to a report of a structure fire on Highway 4 in Alma. RCMP officers learned that a commercial structure was on fire, and the Alma Volunteer Fire Department was able to extinguish it. At approximately 2:25 a.m., a second fire was reported on Granton Abercrombie Road in Granton. RCMP officers learned that a green bin at the side of the road had been lit on fire. The fire department was able to successfully extinguish the fire. Then at approximately 2:40 a.m., a third fire was reported in Mount William Road in Mount William. RCMP officers learned that recycling bags at the side of the road had been lit on fire. RCMP officers were able to successfully extinguish the fire. An initial investigation has determined that all 3 fires were the result of arson. The investigation is ongoing, blah, 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 blah. So they knew there were arsonists running around all over the place, doing everything they can to wreak havoc and suffering. And what do? They punch down on the average citizen who had nothing to do with it. So it's all our fault that there are arsonists, apparently, because of climate change, and we drive cars. Okay, here's Wiretap Media. This is another look back. I'm just giving you kind of the history of what was going on here. This is from January. Oh, no. This is January 19th, 2024. No, they're posting this January 19th, 2024. But this cock of a reporter here, he had plenty to say about those of us who were skeptical of the idea that these fires were due to climate change. So here we go.
There's a lot of people out there who are looking at these fires and who see an alternate explanation. A lot of them point to arson, right? There's some folks out there who just don't want to accept that climate change is part of the explanations.
And is this a small group of people, a large group of people?
We're talking about hundreds of thousands, probably more like...
Okay, this is pretty good on the part of Wiretap Media. I like these guys. And they're showing the different articles here. So here's City News. Quebec man pleads guilty to setting 14 fires, forcing hundreds from home.
And is this a small group of people?
RCMP say arson behind 29 Okanagan fires over the last 4 years.
A large group of people?
We're talking about hundreds of thousands, probably more like millions of people who...
Cold Lake area man facing 10 arson charges after string of wildfires blazes RCMP.
Who are at the very least listening to and engaging with these influencers and conspiracy theorists.
See the gaslighting?
A lot of this disinformation is taking place on Twitter, but also alternative social media platforms like Rumble and Telegram. It is a significant enough group of people that we should probably be concerned at the proliferation of some of this misinformation. On the Rebel, you had this rather alarmist story that said Nova Scotia RCMP blame arson for multiple wildfires, and the Rebel fires. And
so here's police in Nova Scotia report 2 cases of arson in New Glasgow.
Rebel basically pushing the idea that there was somebody individual responsible for all these fires.
Nova Scotia man charged with starting province's largest ever wildfire. I think we just read that.
They later had to correct this story as the RCMP clarified that those fires had nothing to do with the wildfires, that arson was not responsible for the forest fires in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, my ass. They didn't charge him with arson, at least. Danielle Smith is concerned about arsonists causing wildfires. Experts are more worried about misinformation. Yeah, get the hell out of here. She brought in something like 150 arson investigators after, there were the election fires out there in Alberta right around the same time.
So you're seeing some folks, particularly on TikTok, where a lot of this stuff is going incredibly viral, pointing out that a lot of the fires started almost around the same time, and they're seeing a conspiracy in that coincidence.
All of Southeast Quebec just caught on fire.
I showed that clip.
Guys, all of it.
So that's a satellite
Insane.
image.
Yeah, that's right. So what he's pointing out here is that, all of these fires have started more or less around the same time.
City News, Quebec man pleads guilty to setting 14 forest fires, forcing hundreds from homes.
Different parts of the province, and basically concluded there has to be a conspiracy there behind it.
So the thing about all of this, I'm not a scientist, you're not a scientist.
Definitely not.
Definitely not an investigative journalist either. Thank you, Wiretap Media.
There's a lot of
excellent. Yeah, I mean, well, Gore Vidal said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. And as I'm always saying, like, I don't really believe in conspiracies. It's just that human beings are too inept to pull off conspiracies. And it's like, it's transparent. It's in your face. Right from the beginning, I was like, this whole COVID thing is shady as F. Doing so for on Rumble was just saying Pictou County is effed. Yeah. It sounds pretty shady as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing. Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with being a conspiracy theorist. Like sometimes being a conspiracy theorist is these are just ideas that people can kind of bounce, toss around and stuff like that. And I'm cynical. I look at a frickin' freak coincidence like that, and I go, well, what if, right? I want to look at it cynically, that's not exactly like disinformation or anything like that. I think there's a reasonable suspicion, especially in light of the fact that we already had the RCMP press release that said there were 3 cases of arson there in Pictou County. So anyway, these gaslighting leftists are just, oh God, they're unrelenting. God. Okay, here is Stephen Guilbeault. And this is from January 17th. And he says, after a summer of the worst, he's tweeting this out January 20th, 2024. And he's got this oil and gas cap stuff that he's putting there. Danielle Smith, he's retweeting her. Minister Rebecca Schultz exposes the truth behind Ottawa's oil and gas cap. Stephen Guilbeault is saying, after a summer of the worst wildfires on record, it couldn't be more clear that addressing the climate crisis and building a stronger economy of the future requires an all-hands-on-deck effort, but it's clear some would prefer to chart a more reckless course, a thread. And I'm not going to read his whole thread here. I mean, just ridiculous. He's still pushing this idea that it's us driving cars and heating our homes that cause these wildfires, when the reports are already even in the leftist media, that they were arson. So here is Sean Fraser. He's the MP for Central Nova, and he was the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship. He's just recently moved into housing, and this was from the 1st of June. While those wildfires were raging, this is like the day after that proclamation that is now the subject of my judicial review came into effect, that banned entry into the woods all over Nova Scotia. And he was here standing on the fresh ashes of people's homes in the House of Commons to make a cheap political point. Here it is.
I came to Ottawa this morning from my home province of Nova Scotia, where our communities are literally on fire. Thousands upon thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Hundreds are watching as their homes may be turned into ashes. 8 months ago, Hurricane Fiona damaged our communities beyond measure, displacing not just homes, but sweeping people out to sea in some instances. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are peddling policies that they know will increase the level of pollution that is causing these severe weather events. We have one planet, Mr. Speaker. It is.
So now arson is weather, huh?
My home, it is yours. I will not stand idly by and watch it burn.
The honourable member.
See how virtuous he is? So it's Pierre Poilievre's fault that these arson attacks took place because he opposed the carbon tax. That's what Sean Fraser did on the 1st of June while people's homes were on fire. So you might want to ask yourself, cui bono, right? Who benefits? And here is a tweet that I put out on the 2nd of June, right after Sean Fraser was in there. And here is somebody, sustain Nova Scotia, racism and diversity. Hashtag Nova Scotia wildfires. I'm not sure what's up with that, but this is like a yacht club or something like that there on the Halifax waterfront. That is very clearly on fire. So look at this. I mean, I'm looking around and I'm going, hey, where did that fire come from? It's all green foliage around here. Some people are just kind of sitting out, I think, having a little drink outside while the hose is putting out this fire on the rooftop of this this facility. Is that climate change that they're fighting there? No, I think that's an arson attack. And I was tweeting, "Wildfire's my ass." Yeah, good job, me. Good job, me. I called it right. Got to highlight them successes where we can. And here is, and here was another one that I put out there. This is the park by my house that I was not allowed to enter while they had that proclamation in there. And again, that is what I have that judicial review for. I was in court for it yesterday. And it was just standing in mootness yesterday. They sicked the attorney general on me, of course. So the attorney general came after me for, they were questioning my standing to bring it forward. They were trying to get it dismissed as moot and go after me for costs. So everything they can do to scare me off. But I don't know. I think it went pretty well. I should have a written decision in a couple of weeks. This human rights abusing, this is my tweet. I said, this human rights abusing shithole country sure is not the Canada I signed up to serve. Our leaders used to honor the sacrifice of veterans and respect the rights of citizens. This kind of arbitrary abuse is now a matter of routine for these totalitarians. And Chris Anad is chirping at me here. He says, do you want to get trapped by a fast-moving wildfire and endanger others who would try to rescue you? Do you want to get hit by a water bomber? You realize this is temporary. And I'm like, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. So yeah, and this is absolutely absurd because there's no fire anywhere in this picture, you dipshit. Like, what are you talking about? I'm going to get trapped by a fast-moving fire. There's no fire here. There's no water bombers coming into the provincial park where I walk my dog. It's just a bunch of hype. That's what they use. Fear, 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 fear all the time in order to achieve their control. And yeah, I had all these trolls coming after me for this. And guess what, guys? You're a bunch of freaking smooth brains, and I was right. So good job, me. Here is globalist news, and they say the global evidence really suggests that if people are inhaling this wildfire smoke, it may impact birth outcomes. And I said, this is on June 7th, stop calling them wildfires, globalist news. It's arson. Like, we could all see it, guys. We knew what was happening, and they gaslight the hell out of us nonstop. Always double down. That's what they do. That's why I say we need to do that back to them. Okay, and here I am again. And this was what I tweeted at Tory Rushton, who is the Minister of Natural Resources and Renewables, who issued that proclamation. And I said, how are we supposed to catch the arsonists if we're not allowed in the trails, Tory Rushton? How is this even legal? And so this is the park by my house, and they have a sign up on the tree. It says woods closed to travel. Like, it's a park. It's like, what are you talking about, woods? There's some trees, like there's a lot of trees, I guess, but it's a freaking park, and most of it is open space. So woods closed to travel by proclamation of the Minister of Natural Resources. Fire hazard. The Forests Act provides for the minister to restrict travel in any area of the woods unless in possession of a travel permit. So papers, please. You got to apply for your travel permit. You need to ask us permission to live your life. The only thing that matters is that they're in charge, and what they say goes, and how they look. They're worried about public perception, not public safety. Fire hazard, really? Okay. Well, and here's a video that one of my buddies took from the same location here. Anyway, here, enjoy.
All right, today's June 4th. We're on our third day of rain. Not a lot of walk in Peters Field. You couldn't set this place up with a flamethrower, but apparently because of Tim Houston says, we're not allowed to fuck Tim Houston.
Yeah, I have some based friends out here on the East Coast. That was pretty great, I thought. I was just doing some review for this, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. But yeah, I mean, this was the thing. We did have 3 days of rain, and it was soaked. Like we were walking through there, the ground was going squish, 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 and there's this sign on the on the tree that says, "Don't believe your lying eyes." It's straight up freaking commie BS. So that's what really happened.
All right, today's June 4th.
Okay, here's Robin Minotti, and he's tweeting this out. I thought this was interesting. This is something that I've kind of seen floating around out there for a number of years. It looks like maybe it's starting to get some traction. I haven't done the deep read on this yet, so I don't know, exactly how strong this idea is, but I thought I'd put it out there for everybody's consideration. All this crap about climate change, and, we got to get on all these renewables like, cobalt batteries and stuff like that. Robin Minotti is tweeting out, oil and gas are not quote unquote fossil fuels. They are a renewable energy source created by a geothermal reaction between the solid mantle and liquid core, abiogenic deep origin of hydrocarbons and oil and gas deposits formation. So he's quoting an article, and he has it down here in the paper, I think. And open the Access peer review chapter. He's given us a quick quote out of it here. It says, quote, "The theory of abiogenic deep origin of hydrocarbons recognizes that the petroleum is a primordial material of deep origin." And there's the citation. This theory explains that hydrocarbon compounds generate in the asthenosphere of the Earth and migrate through the deep faults into the crust of the Earth. They form oil and gas deposits and any kind of rock in any kind of structural position. Thus, the accumulation of oil and gas is considered part of the natural process of the Earth's outgassing, responsible for creation of this hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere. Until recently, the obstacle to accept the theory of the abysmal abiogenic origin of hydrocarbons was the lack of the reliable and reproducible experimental results confirming the possibility of the synthesis of complex hydrocarbon systems under the conditions of the asthenosphere and of planet Earth, of the asthenosphere of planet Earth. Link to the scientific article posted below. So I haven't done the deep dive on this yet, but it is, I think the science is kind of moving in this direction. At least that's my impression. I've been kind of looking at this for a few years, and it seems to be the case that the Earth just generates oil and gas, and it's all down there, under the crust. So, and I kind of wonder too, because abiogenesis is that's another thing about the stuff of life. Because that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the abiogenic deep origin of hydrocarbons and oil and gas deposits. So we tend to think of them as fossil fuels. We tend to think of them as carbon that was trapped by life, and some of it is, like coal is for sure. And we say it's dead dinosaurs and fossil fuels and stuff like that. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we are actually the stuff of oil instead of oil being the stuff of us. I don't know. Because that is, one thing that people get confused about when you talk about like the theory of evolution is people will say, you think it just happened or something like that. And it's like, no, that's not what evolution is. That's not what Darwin really proposed. Like everybody accepted that life changed over time. Before Darwin came along, he didn't come up with that idea. What he actually came up with was evolution by natural selection due to like selection pressure and sexual selection as well. And and when we're talking about the start of life, that's called abiogenesis, and that is a tougher problem than evolution by natural selection itself. And even the transition between between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells is, with a nucleus and the mitochondria and stuff like that is kind of a more complex problem than perhaps even multicellular life and things like this. But anyway, I don't want to get into all that, but abiogenesis basically means like the start of life, and abiogenic deep origins of hydrocarbons. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it all kind of goes back to that. And it's just the Earth happens to generate these things in a certain way and be in the right proximity to the sun that, once you bask all that, those hydrocarbons and carbon-based stuff in the right kind of solar energy, the chemical reactions that occur may eventually lead to things like amino acids and so on and so forth. Who knows? This is a really interesting idea anyway. And if this is true, it's starting to look like it is, then, oil and gas are renewable. Okay, here is Sean Fraser again. Oh my God. So True North is tweeting out, Sean Fraser attributes the immigration crisis to inadequate responses from, quote, provinces and institutions, close quote, when asked whether he should bear the brunt of the blame as former immigration minister. So here's where
why would you light a fire under temporary immigration to now be responsible for fixing the housing problem that it created? Did you mess up when you were immigration minister in letting this get so out of control, as the new minister has said?
I'd like to know who that woman is. It sounds like the same woman who was grilling Strickland there a little while ago. So
first of all, I'm in complete agreement with Minister Miller's announcement that he's put forward today. When I had the opportunity to be in that position, of course, we built the population growth models into our decisions, as I was just explaining in the previous question, into our permanent residency models. We became aware, and you'll see that I was talking about this when I was still serving that portfolio, the significant growth that we saw more recently in the international student program. We started to try to work with provincial governments to talk about needing to address this issue. When it became clear that we weren't going to find a solution that way, we started to develop the trusted institutions model and started exploring the possibility of a cap, much like Minister Miller put in place today. But we wanted to give an opportunity to provinces and institutions to actually address the problem that was squarely within their control. When it became clear that wasn't going to happen, we needed to use what Minister Miller has previously described as a rather blunt instrument to address a real challenge. So today we're moving forward with that solution after we tried to work initially with provinces and with institutions to address the challenges.
So the question was, did you mess up as immigration minister? You're pointing to immigration as the cause of the housing crisis now. So anyway, yeah, just garbly-gook as usual. And Cynthia is saying, LOL, great question. Yeah, I think so too. And Ron is just chiming in here. He says, even if abiogenic origins of oil and gas is true, the timescale associated with the creation of hydrocarbons is so slow, the topic is merely academic. I don't know if it's merely academic. The fact of the matter is we don't know the rate of replacement, but there is a rate of replacement. So I would imagine that we're probably using it faster than it is being replaced. Yes, but it's definitely an interesting topic that would seem to indicate that, hey, maybe we could even simulate the conditions and just produce more oil and gas into the future. So this is definitely something that's worthy of exploration. And I don't think we're ever going to run out of oil and gas. And it's more of an economic position that I take on it than anything. It's just the law of supply and demand. Like if the supply dwindles and demand remains the same, then the value of that supply is going to skyrocket, and then nobody's going to buy it. They're going to buy something else. So there'll probably always be oil in the ground. It might be a matter of, balancing different technologies or even simulating that abiogenic replacement of oil and gas. But interesting stuff. I know it's academic, I guess at this point it is, but the rate of replacement is not known. That's something that would be interesting to know, though. All right, here's the Edmonton Oilers. Speaking of the frickin' psyop that's being inflicted on the West, they say gearing up tonight with @Pride tape. So they were actually tweeting this stuff. And here's the Edmonton Oilers putting the Pride tape on their hockey sticks. Yeah, and Rob is saying the fusion of sports ball and politics has never gone well. Yeah, I hope so. I hope you guys go woke, you go broke. Here they are, making it cool for the kids to transition into permanent medical patients. Isn't that great? Thanks for that, Edmonton Oilers. Unacceptable Canadian girl. First comment here says, goodbye NHL, woke trash. Yeah, they are trash. Just unbelievable. Oh, this. Hang on. Let me close this out. Here's the Mirror, and this is an article that says trans parent 29 dies of cancer before becoming a woman she was meant quote, becoming woman she was meant to be. She was supposed to marry her partner next year and wanted to try for another baby. A transgender parent who, quote, never got to the chance to become the woman she was meant to be, close quote, has passed away from a battle with testicular cancer. A transgender woman has passed away from testicular cancer. Do you think that had anything to do with the cross-sex hormones? I am definitely suspicious of that. Portia Dixon began transitioning in April last year, but died during the night on Tuesday. She dreamed of marrying her partner, Ellie Jo Lovesley, and the two were set to wed next year. The couple also wanted to have another baby to join their 2-year-old daughter, Amelia Jo Britton. A fundraising page is set up to contribute toward funeral costs. Said, quote, Portia had a kind heart who would help anyone when needed. Quote, she was diagnosed with cancer and didn't have the chance to become the woman she was meant to be. And then it says, quote, Portia tried her best to guide her girls as much as she could. In the time she had left, she never gave up fighting for it. Unfortunately, the chance to watch her babies grow, get married, and have kids of their own were taken too soon. We were taken too soon. Not very well written. Her partner, Ellie Jo, told Lincolnshire, quote, we have to explain to our daughter that daddy is now in the sky, but sometimes she walks into our bedroom and asks for daddy. That is heartbreaking. Yeah. Okay. So all kinds of confusion on this one. And, that's good enough for that article. I think they changed genders a couple of times there. It just gets to be so confusing. It's like we're talking about the same person. We're using all the different pronouns. And it's not mommy, it's daddy. And this woman died of testicular cancer. Here's some good news. And this is Critical Therapy Antidote. And the title is Breaking News. What future for WPATH as membership plummets? In WPATH, it says right here, it says World Professional Association for Transgender Health. That means, sexually butchering children and permanent medical patients. And it says the future for gender affirming healthcare at a global level now looks rather uncertain. Until recently, WPATH looked and behaved as though it had, quote, seen the future and it works, close quote, to paraphrase Lincoln Steffens on returning from the Soviet Union in 1919. WPATH trumpeted the publication of its new standards of care, version 8, only 12 months ago. These aim to simplify and streamline the process of social and medical transition for children, adolescents, and adults in order to, quote, better align their body with their gender identity, close quote. WPATH also simply announced its discovery of the existence of a new unique gender identity, which seemed to require no further justification or discussion. Senior WPATH members were active and highly successful, particularly in the U.S. courts, in arguing for the adoption of its standards of care and research findings in order to promote its gender medicine pathways as the new professional consensus. So it probably comes as a surprise for most observers to note that WPATH individual membership figures appear to have suffered a sharp fall over the past year, even just in the last year, 2023 to 2024. And they show it right here. You've got like over 4,000 members, total WPATH membership, just over 4,000 here in January 2023. And now we're down to about the 2,000 mark. So it's pretty much cut in half in January of 2024. That is a good sign. WPATH global membership stood at 4,119 in January of 2023. As of 4th January 2024, it stood at 1,590. Oh, that's actually more than halved. U.S. membership was 3,104 in January 2023, compared with 1,234 in January of 2024. Again, that's cut down by that's a little more than a third of what it used to be. Currently comprising 78% of WPATH global membership, and that's the US. That's 70% of the total membership. UK membership is a minimal in comparison, with 2% of total membership, although it appears to have experienced a similar proportionate decline from 93 members in January of 2023 to 34 in January of 2024. If taken as correct, the figures represent a massive fail in the global WPATH membership in the order of a 60% drop within the space of a year. This seems to be an important development, the full causes and significance of which remain to be clarified. I'd like to know what the data are for Canada, and this is what all these so-called gender-affirming care pediatric clinics in Canada point back to. They use the WPATH, the standards of care is like their Bible. It's not, they just go back, standards of care, they just do whatever it says in there. And they never have any evidentiary justification for what it is that they're doing. So why is WPATH now on the back foot? WPATH has experienced a number of major setbacks to its professional standing and credibility during the past year. The so-called Dutch protocol, providing the rationale for prescribing puberty blockers off-label to forestall the onset of naturally occurring sexual maturation in children and adolescents, has been comprehensively critiqued and found wanting. There has been a raft of systemic reviews across Europe and also from the U.S. state of Florida, which have found little evidence of the benefit and some evidence of potential harm from prescribing puberty blockers for this patient group. The voice of detransitioners, long ignored and dismissed, has continued to become louder and more insistent. The flagship media coverage of a teenager undergoing medical transition in the U.S., I Am Jazz, seems to have lost its early triumphalism and now appears to have foundered. With the emergence of ever more complex family dynamics and the incipient mental health concerns of its star patient. WPATH's unrivaled status as expert legal opinion has been summarily rejected in a key case hearing in the Sixth Circuit Appeal Court in the U.S., which may well now proceed to the U.S. Supreme Court for further resolution. In the UK, the Interim Cass Review 2022 has found against the Tavistock Gender Identity Development Service model of care, which was arguably closely influenced and aligned with WPATH standards of care. Yeah, I would say that it was. It all kind of goes back to these standards of care. And Tavistock is the subject now of just a wave of lawsuits over there in the UK. They actually banned the stuff. Multiple, it's the UK, it's Sweden, Denmark, Finland, a ton of European countries have already banned this stuff, but Canada continues to forge on. So all in all, WPATH may well have glimpsed the future, but things are clearly not going according to plan just at present. Well, good. I hope they all get sued into a lifetime of poverty. Gender transition and sent for maid, as Justin Trudeau's ego said at the start of the show here. Tribute to Canada is saying, I wrote to my channel with respect to the title of your live stream, quote, it is a fascinating paradox that is often weaker men due to insecurities and weaker morals that can cause havoc in society. It absolutely is. Weak men bring hard times. It's all part of the whole cycle of history. Okay. And, this is my tweet about it. It says, Canada will jail any parent who tries to protect their child from this fate, since all 330 MPs voted for 338 MPs voted for Bill C4, right, Pierre Polyev? And I learned to use my sensitive content warning here, although when I found this image, it didn't have such a warning on it, but I got a suspension there a while back for this kind of stuff. So I'm not giving anybody a trigger warning, but here it is. There you go. So that's what they actually do to these people. This person's flesh from their forearm has been removed in order to be rolled up like a sausage and stapled to their groin. This is for a phalloplasty, so this would be a young girl that this has been done to. That's what they call gender-affirming care. It's just butchery. That's all it is. Okay, and here is Kanekoa the Great, and they're tweeting out, Maddie de Gary was one of 1,131 children in Pfizer's COVID mRNA clinical trial for children aged 12 to 15. So speaking of the medicalization of our children, for-profit medicalization of our children, this is what happened. It says, Maddie developed a neurological disorder and paralysis after her second mRNA shot, which Pfizer reported as quote-unquote abdominal pain to the FDA. 3 years later, Maddie still uses wheelchair and a feeding tube. Despite one little girl getting paralyzed, Pfizer and the FDA recommended mRNA shots for all American children. Does this look safe and effective? How do they get away with this? Well, they're in charge. They're running everything. So they're not going to hold themselves to account.
President Biden, this is Maddie. She's 13 and wants to be a nurse. When the COVID vaccine became available, she volunteered for the Pfizer clinical trial. She wanted to help. This is her now.
I need to take this out.
There are others across the country like her, but they are ignored by the FDA and the media. You said it was safe. Maddie stepped up to help America. Who's going to step up to help Maddie?
Paid for by the Vaccine Safety Research Foundation.
President Biden.
That's a term that Trudeau throws around a lot too, to step up. It's a peer pressure tactic, okay? So anybody tells you to step up, maybe you want to tell them to step off. Just unbelievable. And here's another video of a guy that was paralyzed here too as well. Oh, God. And here is the face of evil these days. So this is George Soros's son who's taking over his fortune. And the good news is he's stupid. Okay, so Scarlett Johnson is saying, if you believe this, is there any horror you can't justify? Just listen to what this guy has to say. This is a TED Talk.
Many, maybe most legal systems are based on this idea, this belief in human rights. But human rights are just like heaven and like God. It's just a fictional story that we've invented and spread around. It may be a very nice story. It may be a very attractive story. We want
Actually, somebody's saying, isn't that Havari? Yeah, I think it is Havari, now that you mention it. I don't know why I thought it was Soros.
to believe it, but it's just a story. It's not a reality. It is not a biological reality. Just as jellyfish and woodpeckers and ostriches have no rights, Homo sapiens have no rights also. Take a human, cut him open, look inside, you find their blood, and you find the heart and lungs and kidneys, but you don't find there any rights. The only place you find rights is in the fictional stories that humans have invented and spread around.
The law is fiction. That's what he's saying.
And the same thing is also true in the political field. States and nations are also, like human rights and like God and like heaven, they too are just stories. A mountain is a reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can even smell it. But Israel or the United States, they are just stories.
They're laws.
Powerful stories we might want to believe very much, but still they are just stories. You can't really see the United States. You cannot touch it. You cannot smell it.
And Camping Mama is on X is saying, Harari is a big problem. These punks are anti-human. Their policies are anti-human. Yes, absolutely. And this is just such a pedestrian, sophomoric case that he's making here. And what I really want to point out about it here, like, this is just so idiotic. It's like, okay, like, ideas don't exist. Like, that's not a thing because you can't touch them and smell them. Well, then why are you even talking? Like, everything that you're saying is imaginary. That's just a freaking idea. So, but what I want to point out about this evil is that he's got the whole paradigm inverted. Rights are freedoms with which the government may not interfere. In the case of charter rights in particular, in the case of the Bill of Rights, which applies to the federal government, charter rights apply also to the provinces and municipalities. And then there are human rights that even businesses need to respect, this kind of thing when it comes to hiring practices and the provision of services. So these are laws that he's talking about. They're concepts, and he's saying, like, concepts don't exist because they're not physical. And he has the whole paradigm inverted. Okay, humans are born free, and it takes involvement of scumbags like this to oppress and enslave them, and those laws are put in place to restrict the activities of guys like this to ensure that humans remain free. They're born free. You're not given your freedom. It's not like frickin' privilege like Justin Trudeau wants to make it out to be. He wants to make rights out to be a privilege, like it's something that's been given to you. And that's just how inverted the paradigm in. And somebody was just asking me to share a link there. But I think, Colleen is saying, can you please share this link, Jeff? Which one was it? I think I caught your comment a little bit late there, but let me know and I'll dump it in the chats. And I was getting better at putting my links in the. Okay, so he's concerned Canadian. He sees WTF is this. They are insane. So this is the World Economic Forum, and they've brought Disease X, Patient Zero to the stage. And here we go.
Na hanuri no yuyua na wa china bu panke tu china chava aqui china mu kikirani tsai chava kirani tsai mu kikirani awa ma wonana no ma wono why sharai
Where's your mask? Is that an N95? What the hell? So yeah, I guess we're not worried about COVID anymore, guys, even though more people are dying of COVID today than ever before. But yeah, I figure this is patient zero for disease X. And I mean, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it just kind of takes care. This is another one of these self-correcting problems. And I thought I recognized that woman. Do you guys remember there was the 2020 vice presidential debate with this is what's his name here, Trump's VP Mike Pence. So yeah, I thought I recognized this woman. Here she is. Oh, too funny. Yeah, so Mike Pence, this is from the time he had that fly on his head and he didn't realize it. It was there for like the whole debate. It was just stuck to his head and he didn't realize it. And Colleen was just letting me know that she wanted the link from the little girl here. It's what's his name here? Kanekoa the Great. So I'll just drop that in the chats for you guys. So anybody who wants to share that around and raise awareness, please do so. And I will get better at just putting these links, I guess, in my my description. But you know, I'm the morning show, so a lot of the times I'm just kind of you know, trying to get my workout in as I line everything up at the same time, and it can be a little pressed for time. Now, here is the bright side of the WEF. Check this guy out, Javier Milei. Oh shoot, this is a 23-minute clip. I was looking for more like a highlight. But anyway, here's Elon Musk. He's retweeting Javier Milei, and he says, good explanation of what makes countries more or less prosperous. So everybody, I said it at the time, everybody was really concerned about Javier Milei. He's part of the World Economic Forum. He's just another plant. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not getting that vibe from him at all. And it could be the case that he's going there to turn things around. So here is his appearance.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Hoy estoy acá
Today, I'm here
para decirles que Occidente
to tell you that the Western world is in danger.
está en peligro
And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged caste, the main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years we became a leading world power. And when we embrace collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress, we can see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at a graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years, we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet. The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxa has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic, and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became fashionable in recent times, in my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes, which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process. If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives. And the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services.
Okay, I think that's probably good. I'm not going to show you the whole clip. That's a good 742 of it, but you get the idea. And Javier Milei, like, I know everybody is very, very cynical right now, because our elites are untrustworthy. And, I'm always using the generational lens to kind of figure out who's who in the zoo here. And Javier Milei, he's Gen Xer. He's, he's one of the younger groups. Gen Xers are the ones leading the revolution, as we see with Dana White, with Ron DeSantis, with Elon Musk, probably first and foremost, and so on and so forth. And Javier Milei seems to be another one of these guys who is a thought leader in the revolution. And he's an Austrian economist as well, so very free market capitalist. And he makes a lot of excellent points here. It's basically the case that the entire world lived on less than $2 a day for all of human history, right up until the 19th century, say post Adam Smith, the Scottish Enlightenment, which happened after Anglo-Saxons conducted the purge of Scotland. They drove out all those backward redheads from the Highlands of Scotland and sent them to Nova Scotia. Once they kind of purged, they purged the Scotland of all the barbarians and savages. Then we got the Scottish Enlightenment. We got Adam Smith, the Wealth of Nations. And into the 20th century, it was another Austrian economist. One of my favorites, or probably my favorite, is Friedrich Hayek. The Constitution of Liberty, I think, is just a glorious freaking book. And that is the one where he points out, it's like, what we mean when we say a free society is we mean one that is free of coercion. And that is the thing about the collectivist mindset, is it's necessarily collective. It's necessarily coercive. You're either an asset or an obstacle to the collective in such a system. So it necessarily, I think, exploits the individual. Whereas in a free system, and that's what capitalism really is, it's just free commerce. And if you don't have freedom of commerce, like you don't really have freedom, because you're talking about like what wealth really is at the end of the day. It's a surplus of resources. So the default is we live in scarcity. We eat hand to mouth, hunting, foraging, this kind of thing, day to day. And there's no surplus anywhere. So if you encounter a time of drought or something, people starve. There's a lot more famine and things like that. But a surplus of resources is what we mean when we say wealth. And what we've discovered through free market capitalism, partially through free market capitalism, is that hard work leads to surplus, things like farming and foods that we can store and technologies and these kinds of things. Hard work leads to greater and greater surplus, i.e. wealth, and nothing generates more surplus of resources than the capitalist system. And with that in mind, I mean, your wealth and money, like time is money, money is time. And the harder you work, the more money you make, the more skilled you are. You work to develop your skills. The more you invest in that time, the more money you will have, the more value your time has. And then the more money for which you can exchange it. So time is money, money is time, and money is just your labor. People want to say like the root of all evil is money, and I think that's a very Marxist, communist kind of way of looking at it. It disparages all of these things. But the reality is that money represents your time on this planet. That's a piece of your life. So who the hell are these people to come and rob you of that, to say that, like he talks about these coercive measures of taxation and so on and so forth. This is a little piece of our lives that they're taking from us when we adopt the collectivist system like that. So does your life belong to the mob, or is it yours? I mean, I know what I think, obviously. And the expansion of capitalist markets right around the early 80s is also worthy of a closer inspection too, because it's my understanding that about 80% of the world's abject poverty has been eliminated through capitalist reforms globally. So yeah, abject poverty being less than $2 a day, like I mentioned, that's how everybody lived right up until about the 20th century, and very, very near to the 20th century. And yeah, less than $2 a day. And when we talk about disparity, that's what the commies will do, is they'll talk about like the stratification of the classes, where they'll say like there are all these poor people in the United States and blah blah blah, but what they're doing is they're talking about relative poverty. This is the same kind of idea, the same marketing campaign that they did with 100% safe and effective. They were using relative data instead of absolute data. So relatively speaking, yeah, there's a lot of people who live in poverty in the United States, but that poverty in the United States, that relative poverty in absolute terms, is $44 a day, not $2 a day, not abject poverty, which is what we really mean when we say poverty. So the thing is, the poor people in the United States, they have a roof over their heads, they have access to reliable power, they have indoor plumbing, cell phones. So that's poverty in the United States. That's not poverty in Africa, right? Okay, and speaking of poverty, yeah, I mean, here's the one thing that I'm always going to point to, guys. But this is CNN Business, and they say boomers won't part with their homes, and that's a problem for young families. Yeah, this is a big part of how we got here, with the housing crisis being what it is, especially when it comes to the inflation of the price of a house. Because the thing is, like in the early 70s, as Pierre Poilievre is always pointing out, like they built way more homes. And so when the boomers were buying homes, it was worth about 1 year's worth of the average Canadian salary, and you could get yourself a family home. And then, there was all this talk through the 80s and 90s about how people don't really invest in the middle class anymore. And we're talking about evaporating middle class. It's a generational issue. So the GI generation that came back from World War II and poured more steel and concrete and built more homes than any other generation since, or any generation before them for that matter, they provided the biggest leg up in all of human history to the boomer generation. And when it was the boomers' turn to pay it forward, what we saw come on the scenes were gated communities. And then Gen X got the starter home, quote unquote. That wasn't really a term. That's another marketing term, a new term that came on the scene with the boomer generation. And they got the starter home, which was basically the 30-year-old fixer-upper that the boomer would sell to the Gen Xer at 4 times the price they paid when it was new, and move into a gated community. And so there's been a real, well, the focus, I guess, the focus of economic prosperity has tracked with the boomer generation throughout their entire lives. And now it's gotten to the point where they're telling Gen Z, you can just live in the pod and eat the bugs. But they still have these massive homes that are not their first homes. And their parents' generation, like a lot of them would have even built their own homes, and they stayed in the same home and died in the same home. Everybody else did that. Everybody else. This notion that you have a starter home and then continue to buy bigger homes, like this is one of the core issues around housing inflation, not to mention the mortgage bond market collapse that took place in 2008. That was all precipitated by Boomer Bill Clinton's repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act that was put in place in 1938 after the last fourth turning major collapse, economic collapse that led to the Great Depression, that allowed the bondsmen to buy up all these mortgages from the brokers and then combine them into a bond wherein theoretically the yield goes up, but the risk stays the same. But the thing is, when you're going around buying all of these mortgages from the brokers who initially issued them, well, that removes that layer of accountability that's naturally built into that capitalist system. So the broker can just give all kinds of bad loans and it doesn't matter because some bondsman's just going to pick it up the next day and he doesn't care if it gets paid back. And that was the boomers coming into their coming into the investment class at that time. And when they reached peak institutional power in the markets, it was nothing but a bubble underneath them. So the whole thing collapsed. And then, in the United States, we had the bailout where the boomer CEOs told all the other generations, you got to give us your money now to save us. And then they laid off all the other generations working in the trades and paid themselves the huge bonuses with the taxpayer bailout, thanks to Boomer Obama. Okay, rant over. I'll look at a little bit of this article here. It says, Washington, D.C., CNN. Buying a family-sized home with 3 or more bedrooms used to be manageable for young people with children. But with home prices climbing faster than wages, mortgage rates still close to 23-year highs and a shortage of homes nationwide. Many millennials with kids can't afford it, and Gen Z adults with kids even harder. Yeah, no kidding. And that's another thing. Who pays the wages? Like, who pays the wages? Who issues the mortgages? Who's selling the homes? Who's the investment class, the peak investment class right now? Well, it's the baby boomers are staying in their larger homes for longer, preferring to age in place and stay active in a neighborhood that's familiar to them. And even if they sold, where would they go? There is a shortage of smaller homes in those neighborhoods. As a result, empty nest baby boomers own 28% of large homes, and millennials with kids own just 14%, according to Redfin analysis released Tuesday. Gen Z families own just 0.3% of homes with 3 bedrooms or more. Quote, boomers love their homes even if they did not want to sell. It is now prohibitively expensive for many millennials, close quote, said Sherar Bakari, senior economist at Redfin, who did the analysis to CNN. Quote, these are larger homes where there are only 1 or 2 people living there, and typically they bought it a while ago, so it has value, close quote. Yeah, no kidding. And that is the thing, is like they just stopped building homes when it was their turn in the investment class. They didn't build family homes for everybody else like their elders did for them. They built the gated communities. This is a change from the historical norm. According to the research, 10 years ago, young families were just as likely as empty nesters to own large homes. The report defines age groups in the 2022 census data. Adult Gen Zers were 19 to 25 years old. Millennials were age 26 to 41. Gen Xers were 42 to 57, and baby boomers were 58 to 76. Even though millennials with kids own half as many large homes as empty nesters, millennials make up roughly 28% of the country's adult population, the largest share of any generation. With many young people already delaying having children as they work to find stability in their family and career, the well-established milestones of purchasing a home for the family is increasingly out of reach. Those COVID isolation facilities that the boomers built for us? How about maximum security retirement homes? How's that sound? The lock-in effect because of rates is only half of it. Few homeowners of any age want to sell right now. This is crushing inventory of homes for sale and keeping prices high. Even though current homeowners have record high levels of equity in their homes, there is very little incentive to sell. More than 90% of current homeowners with mortgages have rates that are 6% or under, according to ICE Mortgage Technology, a mortgage data firm. With the current average rate for a 30-year fixed loan hovering around 6.6%, nearly all but the most recent homeowners would be taking on a mortgage rate higher than their existing rate if they were to sell and buy another home. While it is surely keeping some boomers in their homes, said Bakari, it is only part of the reason. Quote, half of these baby boomers own their home outright, so the rate lock-in doesn't even apply to them, close quote, he told CNN. Quote, they just aren't downsizing. Even if just one or two people or a couple, they love their big house, close quote. And I showed an article here from Fortune magazine a while ago too that said the baby boomers made they're $14 trillion richer post-pandemic, and they were the richest generation in all of godforsaken human history before the pandemic, but now they're $14 trillion richer. Those stats are from the United States, the Fed, actually. So just to be clear, just in the United States, they're $14 trillion richer. So globally, it's a hell of a lot more than that. For those who own their home outright, the median monthly cost of owning a home, which includes insurance and property taxes, among other costs, is just $612, according to the report. Quote, logically, empty nesters are the most likely group to sell big homes and downsize, close quote, said Bakari. Quote, they no longer have children living at home and don't need as much space. The problem for younger families who wish their parents' generation would list their big homes, boomers don't have much motivation to sell financially or otherwise, close quote. They are the let them eat cake generational archetype, by the way. Boomers have always loved their homes. Older Americans today own a much bigger share of larger homes than they did a decade ago, and young families own a smaller share, but who owns them has changed. 10 years ago, in 2012, empty nesters of the silent generation, who were between the ages of 67 and 84 at the time, took up 16% of homes that were 3-bedroom or larger. That is a smaller share than Gen Xers with kids, who were aged 32 to 47 at the same time, and took up 19% of those large homes. But even then, empty nest baby boomers had the most large homes. I think they mean the largest homes. In 2012, empty nester boomers who were aged 48 to 66 owned and occupied 26.4% of 3-bedroom plus homes in the U.S., comparable to today's share. I think like a lot of this is probably a millennial rightness. This is part of the culture war. That is the culture war. She might be Gen X, but that is the culture war. It's between the boomers and the millennials, and Gen X famously stayed out of it. That's why we're Gen X. It was like, they didn't even have a name for us. We're just, forget about it, you people. Young families take up the smallest share of large homes in coastal areas like California and Florida, where large homes tend to be more expensive. Instead, the Midwest is where millennials own the largest share of larger homes, but there is no city where millennials with kids own more than 18% of large homes. Empty nesters own at least 20% of large homes everywhere in the country, but they take up the smallest share of 3-bedroom plus homes in popular migration destinations, as well as California cities like Riverside, California, with 21.9%, Salt Lake City at 22%, and Austin, Texas at 22.2%. What's ahead? There's some small silver lining in the year ahead. Bakari, affordability is expected to improve somewhat in 2024. Yeah, the housing market's going to crash, so buckle up. Mortgage rates are trending down and are expected to come down more as 2024 goes on. That will bring the cost of homeownership lower for young families. As mortgage rates fall, more homeowners will see the gap shrink between their existing mortgage rate and current rates for another home, making selling more palatable. But would-be home buyers waiting for a so-called, quote, silver tsunami, close quote, of older homeowners selling their homes en masse should not hold their breath, said Bakari. Quote, some boomers are ready to downsize into a condo or move somewhere new for retirement, and the mortgage rate lock in effect is starting to ease, close quote, he said. But, quote, there won't be a flood of inventory. There will be a trickle, close quote, he added. And Neil Howe talks a little bit about this in the fourth turning is here as well. He's the one who, forecasted the current crisis would hit us in the year 2020 plus or minus 2 years. And he was right. His theory has been vindicated. He forecasted that all the way back in 1991. And part of what he says is that the boomers will downsize at some point, or like there are a couple of things that are going to happen. They'll probably live more with their kids, and they'll have or their kids will be moving in with them, this kind of thing. But there's a huge collapse that's on its way. I'm thinking probably going to be the year, especially if China makes a move on Taiwan. World War III breaks out. Like, it's going to get rough, guys. It could be the case that that is kind of the boomers' role in the fourth turning as well, is to sort of shelter the other generations with their enormous wealth as we try to weather this economic storm that is coming. So, let's go. Oh, okay. I'm all the way back around here. And Thomas is saying, can't blame it all on the boomers. My mother never owned a home until she was 79. Yeah, I'm talking about a social trend, not a social rule. So it's not a blanket statement. It's a general statement. And social trends, I mean, I believe in social trends. It's what the data would indicate. And it is primarily like it's the white collar class. And that is the boomer generation, because what happens after a fourth turning, the last one being the Second World War, as the GIs came back. And like I said, they built their institutions to new heights and created all these white collar jobs. And so while the boomers were in school, and then when they're graduating, they get to go into all the white collar jobs like the federal bureaucracy and teaching professions, the universities. They become the professors who are the deans right now. So yeah, it's a segment of the boomer population, but it's a strong social trend. Okay, and here's Jordan Peterson, who is one of the great boomers. And yeah, I mean, I often use the Star Wars analogy where, Obi-Wan is the boomer in the original Star Wars. The problem that they're having in Star Wars is that he's the only Jedi of his generation. So here's our Jedi. There's more than one, obviously, but here is our Jedi, Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he says, "And if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of." Yeah, and that is my read of kind of the whole cycle of history. Strong men bring good times create weak men bring hard times create strong men. So the strong men who brought the good times were the GI generation who, built the civilization that we all enjoy so much. And the generation that's born in the wake of the previous crisis who come up in those good times, they are the weak men. That's the boomer generation. And when they reach peak institutional power in their early elderhood, just prior to retirement, by sheer dent of natural attrition, then they tyrannize and exploit us. And the fourth turning is the big collapse. Like it's an economic term. Like Neil Howe is an economist primarily, but he's also a demographer. And the turnings, like we see the boom and bust, the regular cycle of the market, and that's essentially what it is you get a turning when there's a generational changing of the guard at peak institutional power. And so the investment class, they dump their assets and cash out. And so you'll see that dip. And then as the next generation kind of comes in and scoops it up and carries that ball forward and, whatever, then it'll turn back up. But the big dip, the big crash is the fourth turning, the fourth one after the previous major crisis. So that's what we're in for. It's the Great Depression level turning. And that's when that profit generational archetype that's born in the wake of the previous fourth turning, the weak men created by those good times, they hoard all of the wealth. And that's what we saw during the pandemic is they shut down all the Gen Xer and millennial owned businesses and forced us all down to their corporations. There was the big, scooping up all the residential housing there. That was the Canada Pension Plan went out and paid 20% over asking for all the residential housing around that time, drove the market crazy. And they're just going to own those houses so millennials can rent from them and pay their pensions. And who's running the Canada Pension Plan right now? And Tiff Macklem is the head of the Bank of Canada who created all this inflation, so on and so forth. And of course, it is the richest people who benefit from inflation because they get to spend that money first, and it doesn't really lose its value until it trickles down a little further to the lower economic strata. But yeah, that's what's happening. Okay, so anyway, that's it from me today, guys. I'm just going to throw to a couple of comments before I go off. I'm a little long today. I try to keep it under 2 hours, but I was off for a couple of days for my appearance in court there over the whole I didn't give you guys any highlights on that either, did I? The whole the proclamation, the banned entry into the woods during the Nova Scotia arson attacks. But I will say this, I'll give you a quick highlight before I sign off. There was it's me versus the Attorney General, by the way, and I'm self-represented, and there was this whole question of whether I have standing to bring it forward. And I just learned this as I go, right? But there's a thing such as individual standing, and then there's public interest standing. And I made the cases for both. It's just kind of a shotgun blast to see whatever sticks. And when he was questioning my, what was it? There was the private interest standing. He was saying that I didn't get a fine. So like, I don't own like, I don't have a commercial interest in the woods, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't get a fine. He was like, if he got a fine for going into the woods, then he would have that financial interest. So since he didn't do that, then he doesn't have an interest. And I was just like, I said, well, I shouldn't. I said the province was giving out $29,000 fines for people having little bonfires in their backyards. So I shouldn't have to expose myself to that level of risk in order to assure my right to constitutional behavior on the part of my public officials. And that is another kind of thing that I took up this standing of as of right, which is the right to constitutional behavior. Anyway, I was like, I shouldn't have to incur that kind of risk just to ensure my right of constitutional behavior. I said, and frankly, I find this position to be something like a Kafka trap, as in Franz Kafka, as in The Trial. It's a novel about Stalinism, in which, one, we're not allowed to know the processes by which our public officials are making the decisions that impact our lives, and two, we have to commit the act in order to find out whether it is legal. So I don't find this to be a very reasonable position to hold. In fact, I find it to be Stalinist. So I think the judge liked it. I don't know. I think he was kind of getting it there. He understood while I was there. Like, I'm sure everybody had the impression that I was just some kind of lunatic or troublemaker or something. But I'm pretty happy I made a decent case, and I'll have a written decision in a couple of weeks as to whether I have standing and whether the case is moot. Oh, on the mootness, he actually threw COVID in there because there was Freedom of Nova Scotia that tried to have that protest during COVID, and Strang stepped in and got the injunction, and when they tried to take it to court to say you can't do that, you can't put this injunction on us, especially after you allowed all these Black Lives Matter protests and blah blah blah, and the court said, well, the injunction doesn't exist today, and the quote was, this court cannot overturn a discharged order. And the attorney general put that in there, saying, that this court wouldn't be able to overturn the proclamation because it's been discharged. And I was like, well, actually, the appeals court, because Freedom Nova Scotia appealed it, so the appeals court ruled unanimously that the appeal is going to go ahead. and they even put right in there that Strang had absolutely no evidentiary basis for his decision making, particularly as it pertained to this idea of outdoor spread. So anyway, I thought it ended up, I turned it right around, and I dove into a whole rant about COVID, but the judge was like, that's not material to what we're here to discuss today. So it's he's like, it's well informed, but it's not material to the question of whether you have standing and mootness. So move on. I was like, yeah, okay. Well, he went there with the COVID stuff. So I went ahead and did my rant. Okay, guys. I guess rant over. I'm at 2:40 now, a little bit over my time, but I'm making up for lost time here because, like I said, I was off for a few days. So Cindy says, thanks, Jeff. As always, hearts stay warm, everyone. Yes, I think I will. I'm going to get my puppy out for a walk here in a little while in the park that my buddy and I went to for this video.
We're on our third day of rain. Not a lot of walk in Peter's Field. You couldn't set this place up with a flamethrower, but apparently, because of Tim Houston says, we're not allowed to fuck Tim Houston.
Yeah, I have some base friends. Okay, so and Patricia says, great show, Jeff, and she's giving me the hearts. Have a great day, everyone, and don't give up. Freedom. Yeah, don't give up, guys. Just keep fighting. And you know what? I honestly, I feel better. Okay. That's the thing. Like, I feel better just after having engaged in the good fight. So I think that is kind of the ticket. Evelyn says, take care all. And Thomas says, TC Jeff, great show. Yes, thank you, brother, for being with me. And great show. Thanks, says Nick Archer. Tribute to Canada, giving me the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Marion says, great show, Jeff. And Cora is saying, they actually say that we were making less than the average income during the Depression, and that goods and services are more than they were when adjusted for inflation. So technically, we are in a worse economic state than those living through the Great Depression. I mean, those are relative numbers again, right? Like in terms of abject poverty, we're not as abjectly impoverished as they were. Like there was freaking people were starving and stuff like that. Well, yeah, we do have the bread lines already. That's I don't know. It's tough to measure. But Patricia says, good luck, Jack, with your court decision. I hope it works out for you. Yeah, me too. I hope I get to keep fighting that good fight in the right battle space. I do think that the courts are the key battle space right now. And Camping Mama says, great job. I really enjoy your show. So, well, I'm glad. Keep tuning in. I do appreciate it. Hey, do you guys think I should move the show to a later time? Because I think I'm actually overlapping with Jason Levine, and he's really good. And I think we should all just kind of work together instead of competing with one another, work toward collaboration instead of competition. And I will be on Jason Levine tonight, guys. So you can maybe tune into that if you can't get enough of me, then you want to make up for some of that last time where I was off. Then I'll be on Jason today. Oh, Steve is saying, hit him hard, Jeff. You're doing great. Thanks, brother. And Nick says, very interesting. Thank you for sharing. My pleasure. And Cindy says, you've got this, Jeff. No doubt in my mind. Yeah, I made a couple of slips in court there. I walked out of there going, you know what? I didn't even throw the arson in. I can't believe it. I had a written statement all prepared, but the thing was the judge cut me off because I went into like the COVID stats and he was like, okay, hang on a second. And it kind of threw me off my game there a little bit. That's why I had the written statement, because it's not like I'm not a lawyer and I've never self-represented before, but anyway, it did go fairly well. I must say, like I did a whole cross-examination and I think I spanked the Attorney General on a couple of points, so not too bad. And have a great day, all, says Patricia. Serena says, thank you. Definitely have a good day. Mucklestone here, Ron says, keep up the good work, Jeff. I will do that. Okay, and I'll throw over to the guys on Rumble. And ST Verlauni is saying it would be good to coordinate the show schedules. Yeah, I think so too. We're all working toward the same objective here. Let's try not to get in each other's way. So throw a couple of comments in there. I'll check them out after I sign off. If I might move it back an hour. I think I overlap with Levine for about an hour there, or maybe it could be a lunchtime show. I stayed away from lunchtime before because Rebel always did the noon hour, but I think they only do one day a week now, and I don't think that people like Rebel that much anymore anyway. So maybe I wouldn't mind taking that spot. So Jason's usually over by 11. That's Eastern time, and I go. He's over by 11. Is that Eastern time? Shit. So I really overlap with him. Okay. But Steve is saying best morning show, best morning news on the planet. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate the support. And Anita B. Deep says, are you using Bill of Rights or Charter? Well, it has to be Charter. And I think that there's a widespread misconception out there about the Bill of Rights, because the Bill of Rights, that is what constrains the federal government from interfering with your freedoms, but it doesn't apply to the provinces. So this was a proclamation issued by the province, and so I have to rely on the charter because the charter applies to the provinces and municipalities too. I'm not like a legal expert, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but I'm learning this stuff as I go, and that is something I learned throughout all this because I tried to throw the Bill of Rights in there, and I threw in like some UN stuff too on human rights. And the Attorney General came back with like that stuff doesn't actually apply to the province. And I was like, oh shit, you know what? He's right. Like there's nothing written into law in the province or in any of those laws that create a legal mechanism by which the province is obliged to respect these rights. But the charter does have that. So the charter applies to the province. Okay, guys, that's it from me today. And till next time, stay frosty and stay safe out there.
Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs.